following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and an alarming story about a pig.
In space?
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Oh, bonjour. And this is podcast episode number 301. This week we will be discussing episode 4 of Daryl Dixon entitled La Dame de Fer, which means the Lady of Iron. I just want to say, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I say the disclaimer, and you don't have anything scripted to say, but I always cover my mouth because I know you're going to say something stupid at some point to go right after what I
my
say.
thing.
And today was that day. In space. And I cover my mouth so that I can at least stifle the giggle if it happens.
I think we all, of a certain age go back to the Muppet Show and remember the classic sci-fi show they would show in there called Pigs in Space.
Absolutely. I mean, who doesn't remember that? If you don't remember it or don't know it, then I feel sad for you. You should.
I'm sure that all of it is on YouTube, so I'm sure you can go check up.
I'm sure it is. All right, so as discussed, we're going to be talking about episode 4 of Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. It sounds so funny every week to just be like episode 4 of Daryl Dixon, because I never thought they'd actually name a show after just a person. So,
right,
but here we are.
Here we are.
In France,
it's too much of a mouthful to say The Walking Dead, Dixon, Daryl.
Dixon, Daryl. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the episode before getting to deep thoughts or specific moments. Let's do, quick feelings, quick thoughts on the episode. I went first last week, so Steve, you go first this time around. What did you think of episode 4, La Dame de Fer?
It is my turn to go first here. So, I think we were talking about before we started that this episode was a lot of fun. I enjoyed a lot of it. I think there was a lot of great visuals in it. And kind of what I said was it was very much a very typical of a middle of the season episode. Mm-hmm. And particularly when it's this small, right? When there's only 6 episodes, episode 3, episode 4. You're past the intro part of the show and the figure, showing how everything's going to work and the world we're in and the people that are going to inhabit the world. And now you're thoroughly trucking along to the end of the show, which is in 2 episodes. And so this is just sort of, just keep moving, people. Nothing to see here. Just, let's get through this, get on to the next one. And I think they made it with a really nice style, and I think it moves really well. It's 48 minutes long, and it did not seem like 48 minutes long. It seemed much faster. Sometimes you get episodes where you're like, oh my God, there's 10 minutes left. You're like, oh, this thing won't end. And this was not one of those. This just kind of zipped right along. So I enjoyed it. I think there's a couple of nits in there that we can pick that I think are that's just the way it's going to be. But for the most part, I was quite happy with it. And there was a couple of parts in there in the episode that I was like, oh, yeah, that's really cool. So what'd you think?
Yeah. I feel very similarly. I think, I did make some notes about stuff that made me go really, or some, we were talking before and they're either sort of cliched or stereotype or, maybe a moment that felt un-Daryl-like. But I feel like there were less in this episode than there has been so far. I feel like maybe this is, as well as being sort of the middle of the season episode, this is the and I'm using air quotes here, finding their footing episode. Like now, like you were saying, those things have been established. We know who these people are. We know to a degree what to expect from, even like, from Isabel and Sylvie and Laurent and even, Falou and his group, and the tattoo dude, Caudron and Genet, and like we've seen enough of these folks now that we are starting to get to know them. Their behaviors are starting to become more like, yes, that feels very on brand for them. This feels very right for them. And there's also an emotional connection too. I had a couple of moments where I was either having fun or enjoying myself, or got like sucked in, because now we're at that point where, like I said, like part of the finding your footing is we know who these people are, and also we're starting to connect with them a little bit more. Not fully, but it's getting there. And yeah, like you said, there were definitely some scenes that were just a lot of fun, and we're gonna chat about those coming up.
So let me guess, the one of the moments for you, it was the pig story, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about specifics there, but that was definitely one for some very specific reasoning. But yes, the pig story was definitely one of that for lots of reasons. So we're going to get into talking about our individual points with the episode. Let's do an episode description first, sort of remind ourselves what AMC wants to say about this episode before we get into saying what Diana and Steve want to say about this episode. So, Steve, why don't you go ahead with that, and we are going to move on from there.
Well, I would really like to, but I'm afraid that the description that I have is actually for last week's episode. So, I can read it again.
I would agree with you, except I looked it up 3 times, and this is the description of the episode. That I cannot find one that is for this episode.
Okay, well, I mean, this is the one that we read last week, but okay, I will read it again. And then, I was looking at it going, I guess it's, all right. Anyway, what we have is, it's episode 1.4 of The Walking Dead, Daryl, Dixon. And the episode title is, again, La Dame de Fer, and that is translated, as she said, into the Lady of Iron. And the description, although I'm pretty sure it's last week, says, Daryl and Isabel must negotiate with Quinn, the proprietor of the underground Diamond Club, the last vestige of art and expression in Paris. And that is your episode description for last week. So, I think if I were just to kind of make one up on the fly, it would be, Daryl and Isabel and the group plan an attack on the Diamond Club to get back Laurent, who has been taken by Quinn. But that would have been me.
And just so we're clear, that is not the description that we read last week for La Dame de Fer. We read it at the end of the episode when we talked about what the next week's episode was going to be. But the description for last week was the group arrives in Paris, and Isabel confronts her past while getting closer to blah, blah, blah. And then leader of growing national movement called Pouvoir. So it's, I mean, you look it up on IMDb, Daryl and Isabel negotiate with the owner of the club is all that's out there. I can't find anything else.
That happened last week. There was no negotiation this week. I mean, unless you count Daryl like pummeling him, if that's what he considers negotiate, which with Daryl could be. But
he negotiates with his hands, not his mouth, which sounds a lot like Daryl. Yeah, he's not a talker, or Daryl.
He's not a talker,
not at all.
Unless he's telling pig stories, then the guy won't shut up.
Oh God, yeah, you can't even get him to stop. Let's talk writer and director for this episode. A new name and an older name.
Yep, same director as last weekend, and again, so far they've done everything in twos with the director. So same director for episode 1 and 2, and then same director for episodes 3 and 4, and that is this guy named Tim Southam. And like I said last week, he has directed only 2 stories, 2 episodes of In the Walking Dead universe, and that is these 2 episodes of Daryl Dixon, 1.3, and then this one, 1.4. But he has a bunch of other directorial credits for other television shows as well, and I read them off last week. So the guy's definitely got some chops, and like I said, I really like the pacing and the way this episode was structured. So I thought he was perfectly fine in what he did. And our writer is a gal this week, and her name is Shannon Goss, Goss, Goss. And this is her only writing credit that I could find for anything. So this is her not only her first time writing with Walking Dead, but it's first time writing anything as far as I can see. So yeah. So and again, this was an interesting story. I thought the script was okay, and so I think she did her job quite darn well. So
yeah,
we'll have to see if they give her some more bites at the apple going into next season of any of the Walking Dead shows, but in particular this one. And just so you know, while I was doing my research, I did see that, and I don't know if this will be both next week and the finale, but at least one of the upcoming episodes is going to be directed by our very, very good, close personal friend, Mr. Gregory Nicotero. So.
Oh, well.
So they do have a heavy hitter director, who is one of the executive producers of the show, by the way. Will be stepping into the director's chair at some point here.
Well, won't that be nice? How interesting.
So, but anyway, that is your writer and your director. So there you go.
Oh. So the entire opening sequence, I would say, I mean, that the cold open was just basically the vision and then the reality. And I mean, obviously, if you watch the episode, you know what we're talking about here. So the vision being behind the gate, Laurent being surrounded by the Zeds, and then the reality, Daryl in the water after falling through the roof with a couple of, Zeds trying to, sort of half-heartedly bite at him and, yada, yada, and he pulls himself out of the water. I thought that this was an interesting thing to do. I don't think we've ever had like a dream sequence with Daryl before on the main series that I can recall. I don't know. Do you? I mean, he had that episode where he got the the knife to the femoral artery, which was perfectly fine. And he was a little feverish and stuff like that, but they never really.
Didn't they do one where he like was in like this riverbed and he kept having these flashbacks of Merle, and it was like a ghoul that was like in real life was slowly trying to bite him on the leg, because he was like he got like stabbed through his abdomen like with a stick or something and was wounded. I think they did something like that where he was sort of like you said, he was like very feverish and loss of blood, and so he was sort of having these weird kind of flashbacky moments with Merle, but
other than that, I can't think of anything else. And that was, I mean, he was similarly, he was injured. This was more, I don't know, maybe the shock of hitting the water.
It was probably the shock that, wow, there's water below me. Because, I mean, isn't that really your luck, right? I mean, don't you just know that if you or I fall through a roof, we're going to, like, fall into, like, a collection of, like, rakes or pitchforks or something? He falls into like, 20 feet of water, of course.
Right. Wherever we fall, we'd either be impaled on something or we'd just break our legs. So,
it's like, it would be like we would, with our luck, we'd fall into the room from Suspiria that's got like 2,200 miles of barbed wire.
Jesus.
And you're like, are you kidding? I mean, it's just, so,
agreed. Absolutely agreed. But this is Daryl Dixon, and he's gonna have a soft landing.
Clearly.
if it wasn't water, it would have been pillows. I mean,
it would have been I was waiting for like the pillow factory where that's where he fell into it. He's like, "Ooh, the mattresses. Well, that was convenient, you know."
This is the Le Hon Pillow Factory, and
we call it my pillow.
Oh, that would be hilarious. But yeah, I mean that's what was going to happen. It's water or a soft landing, or some kind of like stunt person's hideout, and then the crash pad is there.
Yeah, the crash pad, right? Or the boxes, the cardboard boxes are all stacked up conveniently, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Something, yeah. It just because I got to tell you, when the episode starts and he's like running around on the underground, and then he comes up to the gate and it's locked, and I'm like, how did he get here?
Yeah.
You know, and then it took me a minute because I totally blew off the previously of the episode. I mean, it was on, but I was like looking at my phone or something, and so I missed the very end of the previously when he falls through the roof, and so I'm watching this and then part of me is like going, wait, how did last week end? Because I'm like, I have no memory of him being like running around, and then finally I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, he fell through the roof, and then I'm like, how did he get in the water? I like had to stop and like restart the episode like 4 minutes in just to be like, what the hell is going on here? So
I watched the previously on. I remembered the fall through the roof, and my brain just immediately looked up and went, oh, he's running down some secret passageway that's coming out of this building because he's still he's being pursued by, yada yada.
Yeah, by Cadron and all those guys.
Yeah. So it made sense in my head, and then he comes up upon a grate, and I'm like, of course he does, because people are running after him, so the grate is there and whatever. And then you see Laurent, and I'm like, oh, Laurent was hiding. He wasn't that far from him. That makes sense too. Then the zombies come in. And then they do the thing, and I was like, what is happening? What is happening? Yeah. And I was like, and in that moment, you have the moment where you're like, okay, is this real? Is this a dream? Is this real? Because I didn't think dream right off the bat, because they've been pushing this whole, he's special, he's the one, he's got some sort of special sauce in him. Who knows, right? And I don't know how they're gonna play it. Like, they've given us the tools so far, which is he's a miraculous birth because the mother was bit and he was born and he didn't have any ill effects, yada yada. And we know that, like, the scientific approach, like, but they are taking that as a sign from God, like that kind of thing. But I don't know yet if they were going to ascribe some sort of like magical powers to him or something. I mean, we're still in a fantasy television show, so really anything is available to us. We're in a world where people rise from the dead and and continue to feed,
and consume living.
Right, exactly. So it's like we're in a world where like the fantastical happens. Is it so much of a leap to make this leap that makes him like some sort of special, untouchable human being? No, not that big of a leap. So in that moment, I was like, what, is he like special? Like, is he like, and then I was like, well, does he have some kind of weird zombie blood? And it's like an Ellen Ripley thing where it's like they can smell their own and they're just going to go shuffle off or whatever. And I just, in that moment, I was like trying to figure it out. And then at the very last second, I was like, oh, or it could just be a dream sequence. And then boom, he's in the water, and I was like, damn it was a dream sequence, son of a bitch. So I was duped a little bit by that. And I got the whole thing. I got the previously on, and I was just like, yeah, he's running. He fell through the roof, and now he's running. Obviously he's fine because, the pillows.
He's running.
And the cardboard box.
That's right, clearly, yeah. And the French equivalent of that the guy that owns my pillow was there going, oh, bonjour, out this way.
How do you say Mike Lindell in French?
El criminal? No.
Oh, I think you say asshole the same way. I do not know. Sorry.
You would call him an asshole. We would call him a Frenchman.
Oh, no, don't upset the French people. Yeah, we're already upsetting them with our terrible accents, so we shouldn't,
Are you kidding me? You're not scared of France? You know what the French battle cry is?
No, don't do it.
French battle cry is "We give, don't hurt the Louvre."
Oh boy. And our French listenership
Oh
just
yeah,
went down.
all two of them. Okay.
Yeah.
I as far as like the whole sequence, the bit with Laurent, I kind of clued in that pretty quick. My first thought was, well, he's clearly imagining this. Just because, the kid literally he's there and then the ghouls are there and then he like literally starts to pray, puts his hands in the prayer position and, kind of bows his head. And then the ghouls just kind of move all around him. And then he's miraculously all right. I'm like, all right, clearly this is not real. And because we've seen, ghouls approach him as if he's lunch already. So, this. But the deeper thought I had on it on the rewatch the second time through, when I was not confused as to what was going on, and I did watch actually pay attention to the previously moment, so I saw Daryl fall through the damn, ceiling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
My thought was, are we supposed to think that Daryl is now starting to buy in a little bit in all the hype about this kid? Or because Daryl's kind of just like, he's just a creepy kid, and I'll take him to Paris because that's where you guys want to take him, but he's not the Messiah because that's foolish. And now though, he had this vision, if you want to call it that. What does that mean? And so my point to you is, do you think that now Daryl is starting to become a cheerleader of Team Laurent?
Daydream believer? Here's the thing too, like we talked a little bit last week. Do we think he knows his birth story? Because we think that Isabel told him a little bit about her past. And maybe a little bit about her sister and stuff like that, but I think she mostly has said she died giving birth. Does Daryl know the detail about her being bit? I don't know.
Yeah, well, this kind of plays into what we were talking about before, which is when we're seeing a flashback on a show, are we to assume that it is the character is telling this story to another character, and so rather than just listening to Isabel tell the story, we're getting to actually see it, and so Daryl is aware of all that, or is this just like something that jumps into Isabel's head, and we're watching it as like a private movie? So that we have to go, where do you believe?
Yeah, and I think we both agreed that it's not clear. Like, I think it could be either of those options. She either was telling the story and we got to see it, or this was just her having a memory. So either's possible. So my point in bringing that up is, I'm curious if he had those thoughts. Could it be he's a believer? Yes, that's a possibility. But I'm wondering too, is he sort of creating a narrative in his imagination about what would make Laurent special? Like, is this not so much that he's a believer, but like seeing evidence of him being special because he doesn't quite know what their, air quotes, special thing about him is. I don't know. And I don't think Daryl's a believer. Like, to me, I think he just is ultimately too cynical of a person to have. I mean, he's just been so cynical, even to like Isabel's face about God and religion and things like that. And I just don't think he's just too like world weary to believe something like there's one person who has these special qualities, that they are someone we've been waiting for, like all of those things they're ascribing to him. I think Daryl will, treat Laurent with like respect and whatever, because he's a kid and he has, he's got a special place in his heart for kids and all of that. But I don't know. I'm on the fence about the believer thing. I personally, I'm on the side that he's he likes Laurent, and I think he thinks that, you know, Laurent is a special kid, but whether or not he's like, you know, special,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, you posed the question. Do you have a feeling either way?
I kind of side with you in that, you know, you kind of get the sense that you know, Daryl, even before the fall, was truly in the hole there. You know, if you believe in God, you're an idiot, based on just how awful his life was when, you know, things were relatively normal,
right?
You know, in the before time. And then when you add on top of that life, oh yeah, by the way, the world's going to end and most people are going to die horribly because the dead are going to rise and start eating people. That's sort of like the final coffin or the final nail in the, you know, God is a real thing idea for Daryl. You know what I mean? What was it in Hitchhiker's Guide? The final book was that should just about wrap it up for this God fellow. You know, I mean, it's that's kind of where I'm sure if he had any vestige of believing in any supernatural you know, religious type stuff, it was gone.
Yeah.
But the fact that that's the dream sequence he had, that first of all that he couldn't help Laurent, right? He can't open the door, the gate, the whatever is locked, and he can't find a way to get in there. And then it turns out that Laurent doesn't really need his help and ultimately walks away from him, because that's the vision,
right?
You know, is that he sees Laurent looks like he's in really deep doo-doo, and the ghouls leave him alone and then kind of just, you know, walk away. And Laurent, and kind of like you know, old Nick from Fear the Walking Dead, is like, I'm gonna go out walking with him. And he sees Daryl, he looks right at him, and he kind of gives him a little smile, and then he just turns around and leaves. And so I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of layers to that vision, or that dream, or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, I guess we have to assume that Daryl kind of hitting the water kind of stuns him, and he's sort of, you know, not quite awake, you know, shaking it off, you know, and so on, but it's clearly quick enough that he's not drowning. And because, you know, when he comes to, he is a considerable distance under the water, right? He's not like right at the surface. So but again, I don't know, it's a really interesting sequence to be coming from him, because again, what does that, what is that his subconscious telling him there? Is it that he doesn't think that he's going to be able to help the kid? Does it that the kid doesn't need his help? I'm not sure. And so I really wanted to kind of, you know, see what you thought about it, because it's a lot more than just, oh, look at that, the kid that can be eaten. You know, there's other things in there. So
and I didn't even think about the whole, like, the fact that he's behind the metal grate, like, that ultimately, while there's a lot going on about, like, who Laurent is in those images, it, like you were saying, and I didn't even think of this angle, is the fact that Daryl cannot help him, you know. And like you said, is it that he can't help him, or that Laurent doesn't need his help, so he's behind the grate? So it's, you know, I guess we'll have to see how it plays out to see which metaphor it's supposed to be.
You know, I agree.
And knowing who Daryl is and how he would be about children, I think either is possible depending on how things go with Laurent, like because, like, as it is, he's kind of sheltered, so he does kind of need Daryl right now, but that might change, you know. We'll get to it, but he had some moments, some retorts here and there, especially when he was with Quinn, where I was like, he's not as precocious and immature as I think we think he is. I think he observes a lot, he sees a lot and takes it all in. So I'm curious to see how that will play out. I think we're being set up for a little bit of a surprise where he's concerned in terms of his preparedness to sort of take care of himself or fend for himself. Not necessarily physically. It could just be, emotionally, mentally fend for himself as well, which is at this point important as well.
Yeah,
a lot going on there.
I think that this episode in particular of Laurent, the character of Laurent was written a lot less annoying to me.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? It was the first couple episodes. I was just like, oh my God, this kid's gonna drive me nuts. And a lot of that was dialed down, and he was, you're right, much more. His interactions with Anna and with Quinn, much more mature, and you definitely get a sense that kid sees a lot.
Yeah.
And he kind of knows the score, and we'll get to it because I know you wrote down some of the lines he had with Quinn, and and yeah, I mean even like when Anna, when he's like, you don't really want me to stay here, do you? And she's like, I want you to go where you're happy or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, but you don't want me to stay here. And it's like, the kid gets it. He can tell. He can, again, he's really good at reading people, at least right now. That's kind of one of his skills. But that was definitely a note that I had, was that the kid was a lot less annoying than in the first 3 episodes. It's for my taste. So
yeah.
But you're right. I think we're going to have to see what does this vision mean, and will any of those things that happened in it come back in real life, and what to see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm hoping, because like I said, there were some moments in this episode where they did sort of go against the grain of the stereotypes and some of the tropes. So maybe we're being set up for a little bit of a surprise here. So it'd be interesting to see. So the other moment that I thought was really interesting, just sort of visually, was when, obviously, Daryl fell on the water, or the pillows, as it were, and he was able to walk away fine because, he's Daryl Dixon. But the image of him walking across the bridge, I was like, dude, that's got such 28 Days Later vibes on it.
Oh, yeah.
You got these European buildings in the background, etc. And I was just like, whoa, that's and it only lasts for a hot second, but I was like, it is. And even so much so that there's, the abandoned, now here it's more of like a van, like a delivery van. Whereas in 28 Days Later, it's like a semi tractor trailer that's just stuck there, abandoned. Right. As he's kind of crossing the Thames there in England. But you're right. I had the same idea, and I'm sure if we were to ask our director, Mr. Southam, was that like a little homage or a little nod to 28 Days? I'm sure that somewhere in there, yes, when they imagined that shot, they're like, oh, well, let's do it because it's real easy to do. So, and it looked great. It was. And I know something you said last week, that as I was watching a lot of the exteriors of this week, the stuff in the canals and things that they were doing outside by the Eiffel Tower and so on, really kind of stuck with me, which is, excuse me, that France is such an ancient or old city, and these buildings are all stone, and they're all, hundreds of years old, or most of them, right, mostly, and it has that kind of different look to it that you were talking about either last week or the week before, that an American city wouldn't have. And the fact that they filmed it in Paris, they actually went to France and shot this rather than going to Vancouver or Montreal or some Canadian city that they could shoot, they use for a lot of stand-ins for American cities. It does make a difference, and it does have a very specific look that we are not used to seeing, and it makes it that much, I think, that much cooler. Yeah, Absolutely. I think that I think I said something about it either last week or the week before. Very very same. It's just the authenticity, knowing that they are in France is just. And don't get me wrong. I mean, other cities can sub in for cities. Pretty sure, they did filming in some Canada cities for some of the like Last of Us and things like that. And it happens. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. But when that there's an authentic feel to it, it feels so different. You can't fake some of those buildings, some of those settings. It feels wonderful. The setting is just one of my favorite parts of the show, really. It's just so cool to watch.
Cool.
Yeah. I kind of jumped away from it, but we can jump back. But I also, I jumped away from the whole attack sequence in the beginning, but I did want to make sure to say I liked the blood effects when he hit those Zeds in the water, because it wasn't red, it was more brown. Mm-hmm. It was very like sort of like dark and like mysterious and what have you. But I thought that it was creepy. It was well done. And it felt like that second ghoul was a little faster than the other, because he was like he had more energy.
Yeah, he was trying to chew on his foot. And you for a minute there, I almost was concerned. And then I remembered, wait, what's the title of the show? Oh, yeah,
that's
he's
right.
fine.
Daryl Dixon.
Yeah. If this was called Crazy Carol, I'd have been much more worried. But you're right. The first one was kind of just like, hey, look at me. And the second one was like, ooh, lunch.
Yes.
And this is like a small nit to pick, and believe me, I understand what the alternative is. But the question I would pose to everyone is, what's the light source in the water? That was pretty well lit up water for being like in a dark, I don't know what it even was that he fell into
and wasn't it nighttime when he fell?
It was nighttime and it was raining, so it was cloudy and so on, right? I mean, but man, I'll tell you, that water was lit up because you could see a lot.
Yeah, you could see for miles and miles.
Yeah, right. But again, like I said, I know that if they were to done it and tried to film it, realistically, and I'm using air quotes here, it would have been completely dark and you would have seen nothing, and then we would have had the biter gals going, I can't see anything. We've all been there, right?
Yeah, like you can't win for trying. It's one or the other. It's either unrealistic or it's too realistic.
And then it's too damn dark. Yeah, but that was just one of my little nits. I'm like, wow. Apparently, when he fell in the water, he kicked on the very very powerful light that's in there as well. So, yeah.
I mean, he was struggling with his feet. He could have hit a light. We don't know.
It's true, and obviously because the club has electricity, so maybe it's wired in. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. It's possible. Listen, there's possibilities for all of it. That's for sure. There was a quick scene, excuse me, sort of setting up like the push through this episode to try and find the American and the boy. And there's this great scene where Cadron and Janae are at Falou's group there, which I mistakenly last week I was calling it the Nest because it was up high, but I guess the Nest is another location.
It is. We're going to see the Nest maybe next week.
Yeah, so this would just be I guess you could say Falou's people, I guess, would be a place to.
It's like the Union or something they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically, but yeah.
So Janae is questioning the woman who was comforted by Laurent, which I thought was very interesting, and asking questions. And this woman was very pushy to Janae. How did I can't believe people follow you and da 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 da, and
you'll get yours.
Yeah, Janae was like, I'm sure she's heard people complain about her before. She just takes it with a grain of salt. The entire time that this scene is going on, there's a girl in the background with the baby, and they did tell us the beginning of the last episode, I think, when they first get to Paris and get to Falou's place, he's like, oh, we're 64 now. Someone just had a baby. And so this girl is holding this baby and it is crying this whole scene. And you're like, she is she's like so uncomfortable. Like, oh my God, like, shut up. Like, why are you crying? Like, you could tell she's like so afraid. And, Janae has this moment with the older, African-American lady, and she sort of goes from there and talks to Cadron a little, but she walks over to the group and the woman's like, please, and she
s'il vous plaît.
And she picks up the baby and she just holds the baby for a second and then puts the baby on her shoulder and is like trying to calm the baby down, because it's, she's trying to get stuff done and this baby is crying its eyes out. And I gotta tell you, I've never been so scared for a baby in my life. I was like, that moment had such good tension. Just you felt the tension of that young mother. It was really, really well done. Especially since like Janae never said anything awful. It was worse. She was like a psychopath. She was like smiling and being friendly and nice to the baby and all that. And you're like, oh my God, this woman's going to like take out a knife and slit this baby's throat. I mean, who the hell knows? Because we don't, we have an idea of Janae, but we don't know what lengths she would go to, that hasn't been presented to us yet. So really, the table is clear for that. She can pretty much do anything character wise, because we wouldn't know what to expect from her in a lot of instances, which makes her very scary in some instances too. So yeah, I just want to make sure, we're only in this scene with Falou's group for just a brief couple of minutes, but it is so impactful. It's so like, the quickening in your belly. You're like, you're so nervous. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was nervous for everybody there. I kept waiting for Janae to be like, okay, shoot them all.
Yeah, I'm done. I got the information.
I got the information we needed. They're no more use to me. So yeah, and then you're right. When she went and took the baby, you're just like, again, another example, I think, of this series kind of taking our expectations based on all the other shows of this universe and kind of turning them and not doing what we would expect, right? And every other evil leader like her that we've run into on all of the shows would have wiped all those people out.
Yes.
And particularly like as soon as that the woman is giving her all that sass, about how Laurent's going to save everybody, even you, because they're following you and that's misguided. I mean, you're just like, oh my God, lady, you just are asking to be horribly shot in the face, and you were waiting for that to happen, and then the baby won't shut up, and she keeps noticing the baby, and then she goes and she gets the baby, and like you said, and you're like, oh my God, she's holding the baby. She's holding the baby. Oh my God. And you're just waiting for something bad to happen, and then it just ends. And she didn't kill anyone that we've seen anyway, right? So yeah, it was definitely, I think, turning a little bit of our expectations back on us and be like, aha, see, now you don't know what we're gonna do. So yeah, I was right there with you, where I was very, very concerned when that happened. So hey Diana.
Hey.
Question for you.
Oh boy.
How crazy do you have to be to die over pigeons?
I don't know.
We find out.
On the latest episode of Daryl Dixon, find out how crazy you have to be. I don't know. He was like a sweet old man. He was like a sweet old French man. And his one purpose, and they're all very, they all have some type of faith in their life. This Falou's group here. And I think, his purpose was the pigeons, I think they all probably, the way that little settlement is set up, everybody contributes. Everybody contributes something. And, maybe I'm not good at, gardening, but I help out where I can and I garden where I can, like that kind of energy. But the thing that he's good at is the pigeons, and that's the thing that he can provide. And they obviously, in terms of communication, have to be important. He's so, it just was so, it was heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It is a little crazy, but I think he went into that moment with, like, when he stepped out to try and save his birds,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was trying to be like, look, they're special. They're more
my
special.
Children.
Yeah, they're not what you think they are. I need to tell you, and I that's out of fear, and I would like to think inexperience, but I mean, we are like 12 years in at this point. So if he really thinks every person on the street is going to be nice and go, oh, so your edible animals here, they're special, so I shouldn't eat them. I see what you're saying.
No. They told him, they said, don't worry, your pigeons are going to be delicious.
Yeah, we're very excited to eat them.
And then they shot him.
And they sure did. Oh, God, and then Daryl, he's like, and it was so, Daryl's like, guy shot in the chest. Nothing's happening here except death, right? And Daryl goes to, like, touch him, puts his hand on, like, and the guy, he's so honest. He says, it hurts.
Yeah. It hurts.
It hurts. And I was like, oh, no. But then it was so, like, he says, the birds, let them free. So, I don't know. I thought it was heartbreaking, the whole scene. It was, and I know that there's an element of crazy there. I get that. But I just thought, like, the way they put it all together is just heartbreaking,
Yeah, see, I just thought it was crazy.
Yeah.
I just, just like, yeah, dude, you're flipping nuts, okay? It was nice that Daryl, zapped those two guys and got the birds back, and then once you realize that the gentleman was beyond really any sort of aid, right? I mean, he's not going to be able to really help him. Putting a Band-Aid on that bullet wound isn't going to help, Yeah. And so he gets the birds, and then they let them go and they fly away. And that was I get that. That was perfectly lovely. I did think that this was another moment of Daryl being very un-Daryl, in that, why is he not driving that Jeep? Why is he not taking all of their guns and bullets and stuff? I mean, again, it's like, at this point, the idea of, like, sneaking around the city and being quiet is kind of over, right? I mean, they're all out looking for you, and that Jeep had, like, a 30 caliber machine gun on it. I mean, so that bothered me a little. And I mean, I suppose it's possible that he did do that stuff, because the next scene, he just shows up in Izzy's apartment. And so we never really see him get there, but they never are driving in that thing again, because they go on foot to get to Fallow and all of his people, so they can, launch the attack and all that stuff. So I don't know, but that kind of, again, that has bugged me the whole time, that Daryl is just like, I got this Morning Star, so I don't need a gun. What would I want a gun for? So that was a little bothersome to me. Did that strike you as something he should have done?
Yeah, for one thing, I wasn't even thinking about the weapons, honestly, but I never understand when people don't, I'm running away from this thing, and these people come upon me and they have a vehicle, and then I kill them. Take the fucking vehicle.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you take the Jeep?
Yeah.
And think of how helpful that would be. First of all, just for, like, camouflage alone, yes, you're very noticeable in a Jeep. You can't sort of like hide behind buildings and stuff. It's noisy and it's coming. But it's also recognizable as like one of like the Guerriers. Like it's one of their Jeeps. So
they'd be like, oh, that's just, Philip.
That's one of our people.
Yeah.
So they could have used that to slip out of the city,
right?
And Daryl knows better. He knows how to slip out of someplace with like, I just can't believe he wouldn't be thinking of that.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. That was as crazy as the pigeon guy was. That drove me crazy. I was like, oh, come on, Daryl. Come on, you do better with that. And also, and right before that sequence happened, I thought it was a really interesting little moment because Daryl's kind of lost at this point. In that he's trying to get to her apartment, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, she kind of took me there last time, and I'm disoriented because of the whole, in the water and the pillow factory moment. So I don't really know where it is, and I don't really know where I am, and I don't read French, and I don't, you know what I mean? So he's really kind of struggling, and he's walking around, and there's this great moment where he like hears like a cello being played, and he's like, eh? And then he looks, and you see, and there's some guy in his like apartment, on one of these streets, just kind of playing his cello. Yep. And then he looks, and like at the apartment window right below it is this like older couple, and they're like having breakfast, and they're very, kissy facey and, touchy feely and very happy. Right. And it's very, very domestic and normal. And it's just sort of like, oh, okay. So there apparently are some survivors that are still living in Paris that are still living and still, going about their kind of daily life. And then as soon as he sees those two things, we hear some of the ghouls, and he kind of looks over I think he's on like a staircase. He's like going up a set of stone stairs to get to the next street or something. And he looks over the railing, and there's a whole bunch of ghouls down below him. And it just kind of brings back that even in this weird universe we have where there are the Walking Dead everywhere, there are still some people that are just still living. And I thought that was a really interesting little moment to throw in the show right in the middle of this kind of chase sequence. They're on the move, they're doing stuff, they got things they got to accomplish, but we're going to take like a minute and kind of show there are other denizens of Paris that have no clue about what they're doing. They're not involved. They're not part of Fallow's group. They're not part of the Guerriere. They're just people. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting. And it was real quick. I mean, they didn't spend much time on it, but it was right there. Did that strike anything with you when you saw that? I just felt like it was showing that there are still, like you were saying, there's still just regular people that maybe aren't part of a group. Like they don't necessarily support like the Union, and they don't necessarily support the Guerriers, but they're just trying to survive and doing it in whatever way they know how. And sometimes that's doing what would be like normal to them. And if it would be normal to you to continue to play your cello in the morning, then that's what you do. And if if you always had breakfast on your balcony, and maybe that isn't your original apartment, then you have breakfast on your balcony. I did like, there was a moment there though, where he sees the person playing the cello. Mm-hmm. And then he sees the other balcony with the people having breakfast. And then he looks down below them, and there are ghouls like roaming around in the area just below this apartment building. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like a reality check. Like he's not like, because he had the moment where he was seeing things, like he was having like that dream sequence. It was like am I dreaming this? You look down, you're like, no, we are still in the apocalypse. This is real. They're just, trying to maintain some normalcy, even though this is going on like literally right below them, Yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought it was very interesting. It was very French of them. So it was, I mean,
in America, you're not going to have somebody playing a cello by the window. Not really.
Probably
I mean, maybe
not, no.
maybe you would, but not, not in the woods of Atlanta,
Yeah, they'd be playing the banjo.
I mean, maybe, or, it's just more prevalent in and this is, and keep in mind too, this is a city. This is a very large urban center. So it's not, Daryl is coming from this area that is very rural, very country, I mean, yes, the Commonwealth notwithstanding, he's more used to, woods and nature and things like that. And this is like urban sprawl with buildings and people and stuff. And it's not, so it sort of even highlights that difference to him, that this is, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. So,
right.
Yeah, thought that was interesting. He does eventually, he meets up with Isabel, and he makes it to her apartment, which I thought that was great. They set that up as like a meeting place. It was like the last thing he shouted to her before he sort of ran off and sort of drew the guards away, meet at your place. And so he finally makes it there, and Isabel is there, and they have this moment, and I really, really liked it because it showed that there's a closeness with them, but it's a different kind of closeness. I can't really even put my finger on it, but she was so relieved that he was there. And I think there was a part of Daryl that was relieved that Isabel was okay too. And there's a hug that happens, which I think was unexpected for both of them. It was clearly unexpected for Daryl because it took him a second to even put his hands on her back and pat her back in the midst of the hug. But I don't think Isabel was expecting to want to hug Daryl until she got to that moment, was like, oh my God, I'm so glad that he is okay. And I need to express that by embracing him and letting him know that I care about him, however deep or meaningful that may be. It doesn't matter. She still has feelings of care for him and just embraced him there. So I just really liked that because it was more layered than just a I'm so glad to see you hug. But what did you think of that moment, their little reunion in the apartment there?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily take it to be she was, had feelings for him, or was grateful that oh my God, Daryl made it. I think it was more of, oh my God, somebody made it. The fact that she lost the kid, and that's her mission that she's been prepping for the last 9 years, is taking this kid to the nest and doing that, fulfilling that destiny, and so he can take his place as the savior. And she lost him, and so she's very distraught by that, and the fact that Daryl made it out, and is there and is like, we're gonna find the kid, let's go, and all that. I think that when she sees him, I think there's a she was probably, because when the scene opens, she's just standing there by herself, and she's kind of looking around in her apartment, and she has this very concerned look, almost like a hint of panic. And she's just very still. She's not running around, but she just kind of has that, crap, I'm here. He's not here. How long do I wait? Yeah. What if he didn't make it? They were going to try and kill him. She's like, you can just see all of the doomsday scenarios are running through her head. And What if I'm the last one? What if I'm the only one that made it out? How am I supposed to find this kid? I don't know where he is. He doesn't know anything about Paris. Where am I going to look, and all this stuff? And then Daryl shows up. And there's kind of that moment where she's like, oh, thank God, that, or maybe it was a bit of her going, maybe there is something to this whole God thing here, and this is a sign that Daryl made it, and everything is going to be okay. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was one or the other, but that's what I read out of it, is that when she hugs him, she's sort of like, oh my God, we actually have a chance to do the things we need to do, rather than how you doing, that type of thing. So
yeah.
But it was a real interesting moment, because you're right, because Daryl's not really very, huggy anyway. And she kind of comes around and she goes in for a full hug. I mean, that was definitely a Herschel hug, like we got, where I mean, she just went in and the arms were around and she was squeezing tight. And when you get the reverse shot of Daryl, he's kind of like we're doing this, okay, and then he does the kind of the oh, you're fine pat on the back, like, let's break it up, come on, let's get going. But you're right, he it took him a minute to kind of really reciprocate and just be like, yeah, it's good to see you too, kind of a thing. But that was what my take on it was. It was not that she has feelings for him or that she's falling for him or anything. It was just more of, somebody else made it, and maybe we can find the kid and we can do the things that we're supposed to be doing here. Now all is not lost.
Yeah. I think what's cool is, like, I felt in that moment like it could have gone either way. Like, if you feel like there might be more feelings than just concern, you could find that in that moment or not, like you did. So I think it was there. It was open to interpretation for each person. I think they didn't make a choice either way. They just made sure to show you that she cares about people making it, like you said. She was glad that Daryl did make it, and she wanted to sort of show that she was, relieved. Mm-hmm. And when she was relieved, she wanted to show that physically, with a hug. And who can blame her?
Who could blame her?
I know. So we've got like a long sequence at the Eiffel Tower that I want to talk about, but there is a little bit of a setup, and you included some stuff on that. Prior to getting to the Eiffel Tower, we do get a little bit of a setup at the nightclub.
The Diamond and Ode.
With Quinn, and he seems very bored, and he's like and he gets an update from one of his guys. He's doing like the bills. He's writing something out. He's very busy. Quinn is a very busy man. He's in charge here, and Anna, who is his girlfriend / singer at the club, is right there. And this dude comes in and gives an update and tells him, we can't find the American. We think we might know where the kid is, or, whatever. And it's very clear. Then Anna gives him the information. She's like, I think I know where he might have gone, because of obviously the Eiffel Tower trinket that she gives him. And and he showed the picture to Anna, did he not? I think so, because she was like, she's very pretty or something. Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah.
So and that's why she gave the Eiffel Tower trinket to begin with. So she gives that, and she's like, I think I know where he might be. And, ultimately, like later on, she kicks herself for having given that information. But she did have a really great moment there with him where she was sort of probing how he felt about the whole Isabel situation. And you included the quote, which I thought was really great. Very spot on.
Yeah. I mean, the scene opens and you're right. He's like writing in his little book, and she comes up and talks about how she has made contact with someone that has some truffles, and she's like, we could get them for the club, and clearly like trying to like go back to business as usual. Mm-hmm. And he is just having none of it. He's like, what are you going to cook now? And she's like, no, but and it's at that point that the guy comes in and he basically gives the status report about how the Guerriere have not found Daryl yet, and they're also looking for the kid. And then Quinn goes, why are they after the kid? And they don't really know at this point. And that's when what I really liked was that, Anna, is I mean, they should have just dressed her in green.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, God,
because
yeah.
I mean, the woman is obviously very insecure in her status, and is unbelievably jealous of Isabel, that you have to assume that Quinn over the years has talked about her as like the one that got away, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah.
And so the fact that there she is now suddenly back in his life, this woman is completely convinced that, he's going to throw her to the street and move in with Izzy. Right. And so she is doing everything she can to get that woman out of his life. Right.
Yeah.
And so when he starts asking about the kid, she's like, why do you want to know about the kid? And I don't think she knows that necessarily that it's his son. Maybe she does. I don't remember. But she immediately connects the Laurent to, you just want the kid so you can get her. And so then, she has this great line where she says something like, women need a damn good reason to come back. And again, kind of reminding him that, look, you kind of had it coming.
Yeah.
You were two-timing with her sister while you were dating her, right? And so, yeah, I mean, so you would have to do something incredible to make her want to come back to you. And he is sort of like, really, and he's not really paying her a lot of attention. He's still writing in his book and all that stuff. And then she goes on to say, and sometimes we need a damn good reason to stay. And that to me was just a threat of, it's like, you keep messing around like this, you keep going down this road, after a while, you might be going down this road by yourself, and I really like that scene, because when they introduced that character, I wasn't really sure about what does she get, what's her purpose, what's she gonna do, and now I'm kind of like really enjoying her performance as just this woman who's just like, I want these people out of my club. I mean, that's where she's at. She's like, I don't care what it takes, just get out, Which later on, when Daryl shows up, there's a great moment with her that I know you wrote down, and you're just like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I really like that line. I thought those two, they're not like exactly back to back. There's a little bit of talk in between the two of them, but I thought they're really good.
Yeah, it was a really good scene. It gave you, I think last week gave you a small peek into what Quinn and Anna's relationship is like, just a peek, but this week really sort of laid it bare. She is, like you said, she's jealous, and she's never going to live up to this woman who left him on the side of the road.
Left him on the side of the road and became a nun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was so great that no other man on this planet would work. It had to be Jesus. You know what I mean? How do you compete with that? I ask you.
Oh, I don't know. I do not know. Anyway, so after we get that sequence, then yes, she was right. He did go to the Eiffel Tower. It's interesting.
We should say too that before the scene happens, with jumping back to Daryl and Izzy's like, I don't know where the kid is, and he's like, she's smart, he'll know, and she's like, he doesn't know Paris, and then Daryl's like, I know where he is.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
Daryl also makes that jump of, well, the kid loves the Eiffel Tower. If he's alone in the city, and it's a huge landmark that you can literally see pretty much from anywhere, that's where he's going to go. And so you get the idea that, okay, Daryl and Isabel are heading there, and now some of Quinn's thugs are going to go there as well. So it's setting up this next scene. So go ahead, continue.
What's interesting too is just a little tidbit before we move on, but it was set up by Daryl and Isabel first when he says, I think I know where he is. And then they go to the club scene. I really thought that he was going to go to the club. he heard that word about how his dad was this guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he heard all of that stuff. And I was like, I wonder if he'll go to the club and try and seek out Quinn. And, here he is in the front, and I was fully expecting Laurent to come walking in. And then when they show him outside right after Anna's like, she had an idea where he was going, I was like, oh, Eiffel Tower. Yeah, well, that made sense.
Right, yeah.
That makes way more sense. But I did have an inkling, like, at first I was like, could he go to the club? Like, would he try that? And I mean, that's a possibility, but the Eiffel Tower makes way more sense. So, yeah.
Look, think about it. The club, it's like one of two places that the kids been in the whole city.
Right.
Three, if you count the cemetery. I mean, it's like, he doesn't have a lot of choices. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true. He doesn't, if he's got to run away from that settlement, he has only been 2-3 places, really.
Yeah.
But yes, he chose the one that was easiest to find because, like you said, it's tall and you can pretty much find it from anywhere. So that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
The Eiffel Tower was crying, as Falou said, because it's making those noises. It's amazing. It was just really, really, really cool. It looked great. I thought all the CGI they used looked fairly realistic, and so when he's there and looks up and you see all of the damage, etc., I thought it looked really, really good.
I did too. I love that the top, the point was, basically destroyed when, Falou said that a military helicopter ran into it, and you're like, yeah, that's what it looks like. And the whole thing is like rusting and kind of, it almost has like a Leaning Tower of Pisa kind of look to it. It's kind of not totally straight anymore. And so, yeah, I love that look. And I thought that the CGI was really well done.
Yeah, it's funny, the sounds that it was making. I had a truly personal sort of reaction to some of it. When I was in college, we did a production of Trojan Women, and the set designer, who was my academic mentor and my sort of personal mentor, we're still really good friends. He's a set designer, and he's very artistic and very like fantastical. He'd always do something that was like, big and beyond and whatever. And he had this idea. We built a set so that the chorus from Trojan Women, they were going to be creating music within the set. So when they were doing their little, the chorus in most, Greek tragedies, they have moments where they speak directly to the audience and sort of do, exposition and tell you more about what's going on in the story and et cetera, et cetera. So in this one, he created a set that they could play like an instrument. There was like piano wire strung in certain parts of the set, and there was think how the shell is made at Millennium Park, the band shell with like sort of the curved metal sheeting and stuff like that. We had that on the set. So they were literally, and I'm using air quotes here, playing the set. And the sound was so like what the Eiffel Tower, sort of like this, atonal, like it just making odd noises to sort of like put you on edge, and it just created this atmosphere. It was really, really cool, the set itself. But it's the only time in my life I've ever seen something that just evoked that same feeling to me as that set. And I just thought it was super cool. Like, part of me wants to like take an audio recording and send it to my old professor and just be like, it's totally made me think of the set from Trojan Women. And he would, of course, agree, I would assume. So yeah, this just was my own sort of personal thing. I think Lisa Dupre is the only one from college that listens. So I'd be curious to see if she's listening, if she felt the same way, if she could back me up a little bit. That's what I'm looking for, is for someone to say, Diana's not crazy here. It did sound quite like that.
Oh, so. Look, we don't use words like crazy or friggin' nuts with you anymore. You're fine.
Freaking nuts. That's kind of That's kind of rude. Anyway, so I loved the way that Eiffel Tower looked. We both agreed. Looked great. They did a good job with the, the CGI and the what have you with the tip of it and all of that. But one of my of course moments was Laurent finds out that there's ghouls that are sort of being held there behind all of these like sandbags that are around the base of it.
Right.
And then of course while he is there, that's when they break through. And I'm just like, really? Right now? Like to the point where they like knock the whole wall over that's in front of him. I'm like, they didn't do this before. There was nothing else that would have made this happen before. It happens right now.
Yeah.
So it's just it's one of those stereotypes that's used in zombie related, whether it's movie, one of the Walking Deads or whatever. No matter how structurally sound a thing may be, it is going to break or bust open or release the hounds, as it were. When the person is there. It's not going to do it like 20 minutes later when you're walking away or whatever. So it's a stereotype I don't enjoy. And I was disappointed to see it there. There was a cool action sequence that came out of it. And some cool, we got to see some cool ghoul makeup, up close and personal. Some more up close and personal than others. But I thought, the scene that came out of it was exciting and interesting. I hate that. Like, of course the wall falls over right now. So what else did you go ahead?
I was gonna say that there was definitely a little bit of course that happens, but I think I was a little more forgiving of that instance here. Okay. Because I love the idea that the Eiffel Tower has become a sound trap for the ghouls, that the moaning of the metal is drawing them, much like the Whisperers would use the, the windmill or whatever to try and attract them or something, all that kind of stuff that we saw in the main show. So I like that. And, clearly you get the idea that, when the end was happening, the French military or the police or something had made that some sort of base, some sort of area where they set up the sandbags to try and have a protective area type thing. And so you're right. It's like, of course it breaks right then. But like I said, I was a little bit more forgiving of that because I don't think it was like a perfect wall. I mean, I think that the ghouls could get in and out. They just happened to push the wall down right where he was because the one saw him. And, when because, excuse me, he walks up there and he looks through, there's a little opening in the sandbags and, you can see all the ghouls kind of parading around. And then one of them sticks its head and they're like eyeball to eyeball, and so then that ghoul's like, oh, there's somebody I can eat. And so, now he or she or it is pushing against the wall. And then other ghouls say, hey, that ghoul's pushing against the wall. So then they start pushing against the wall and then boom, it falls over. So I was a little bit more forgiving of that, just because we did get a really cool action sequence out of it that Daryl shows up and, he morning stars about 15 ghouls and Isabel uses his trench knife and, kills a couple that way. And my absolute favorite moment of the whole episode happens in this sequence when Laurent is hiding under this like big piece of tin, or corrugated aluminum or something that he's just kind of pulled over and, he's, freaked out. He certainly isn't the Laurent from Daryl's vision, and is very scared, obviously. And he's got his face on the ground, and he's looking out through this opening on the side, and he sees the ghouls kind of their feet walking by. And then all of a sudden, this ghoul sticks his head down and looks underneath.
Yeah.
And it's just like, woo, ooh, lunch. It's like a candy bar. Let's peel this back. And I that was my favorite moment when that ghoul just sticks his head down. And I was going to ask you, do you think that was just a normal, everyday Walking Dead ghoul that we've seen a million times? Or do you think that was some kind of variant that was a little quicker, a little smarter?
Yes, and I'll tell you why, because it felt like it looked underneath, and when it did look under, which first of all, why would it do that?
Exactly.
There's no reason to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And when it did that, and he saw Laurent, his eyes went just a little. His eyes widened. So I think there was a little bit of differentness there. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I that's what I got too. I mean, I got that. Okay, this is whether it's like, the Flyboy ghoul in Dawn of the Dead that has the memory of, oh yeah, there's a fake wall over here and we can push our way through it and get to the people to eat. Like that kind of difference between the other ghouls, right? Or was this like a climber ghoul that we saw at the end of the main show? Or the ghouls that could open the doors and so on. I don't know. Right. But I definitely got the sense that it was certainly a little bit smarter and not just instinctual. There was some actual thinking going on, because Laurent didn't really do anything to give away the fact that he was under there, and that thing still looked under there.
Yeah. I know, and that's different. We haven't seen that before. It's almost like a curiosity was on display there.
A curiosity, or it looked at that piece of metal and went, somebody could hide under there.
Yeah, and also there's the leap of there was a little boy here before. Yeah. Where did he go?
Yeah.
So you need to look for. There's right now there's two big humans over there that are fighting, but there's somebody else that was here that was tasty and he went away. Where did he go? I'm gonna find that tasty treat before everybody else does, because I want to bite into him first.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, it was my favorite moment of the whole show. It was really well done, and it was scary, right? Because here's this little kid, and all of a sudden this ghoul face is right there, and you're like, oh crap. But then there's that added layer of, how did that ghoul do that?
Right.
And again, France is the land of the variants, right? That's what we keep thinking we're going to see. Right. And I'm wondering, did we see one? And so I would love to hear something from the production team about this particular ghoul. Was there something more to it? Or was it just one that just happened to look? So, but anyway, I definitely got that sense. I did.
Agreed. And like you said, I hope we get some more instances soon. I mean, obviously we did with like the boilers, but it's I want more. Like I'm hungry for more. Much too. Like this one was hungry for more. And he looked under the piece of tin. Yes. So it wasn't. So the curious ghoul was killed by these people who came to kidnap Laurent, and they were flunkies for Quinn.
For Quinn the Eskimo.
Yeah. So they brought him back to the club. There was a guy that
one of them does. One of them Daryl gets one of them, and the other one drives away. So so they end up with, they got one of the henchmen, and then Quinn has the kid.
Yeah, so they get away, but they do have the one behind, so that leads to two really great scenes where we have Laurent at the club talking with Quinn, and Anna's there looking very like, what have I done? And then we also have this guy Armand who is being held by Isabel and Daryl in a quiet location so that they can beat the shit out of him. And there's two, very different scenes, but they both are gonna connect back to each other. And I did enjoy. I mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to make sure to cover it. Laurent is. I'm curious, like, he doesn't seem as interested in Quinn as he was in finding out who his mother was, like seeing her picture, etc. He wasn't as interested in getting to know who his father was, even though he knows that that's who this is. And when Quinn says, I'm going to, I'll keep you here, I'll make you safe. And he's like, well, how are you going to keep me safe? He's like, I already did. I saved you from those, those walkers at the Eiffel Tower. And he was like, I didn't see you there, which I thought was, and he was like right on it. Like he was ready with that retort. And I was very surprised. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little proud of him with his little sassy retort, and he wasn't wrong. Here was Quinn taking credit for something. I mean, yes, Laurent was saved in the moment by one of those kidnappers, but it wasn't Quinn that did it. It was this dude that saved him ultimately. Yes, to kidnap him and bring him back to the club, but still, like, Quinn was like the catalyst, but he didn't do anything.
Well, Quinn sends him. Quinn. This goes back to the Return of the Jedi when Luke confronts Obi-Wan about, you said that Darth Vader killed my father, and Obi-Wan has this great kind of weasel out of it excuse of, well, the truth really depends on a certain point of view.
Right.
So from Quinn's point of view, yeah, the reason why I'm talking to you right now is because I sent those guys and told them to get you. So I saved you. And the kid's going from the point of view of, you weren't there. You didn't save me. Some other dude saved me, So he's missing kind of some of the nuance there. And what was great about, I thought, his retort is that it's not, if you watch it again, I don't get a sense of, it's not mean-spirited. He's not saying it to be mean. He's saying it more of just matter of fact.
Yeah, he's stating facts. He's a smart guy, and he's sort of saying, well, no, you're saying the wrong thing.
Yeah. It's like you say you saved me, but I didn't see you there. So but it was. I'm sure it was said. I'm sure the kid said it to make it land, but he didn't. He could have said it real snotty. It could have been a real, well, I didn't see you there, and at that type of thing. And it wasn't. It was just very kind of matter of fact. And it kind of, the way it arose, Quinn asked him, what did Izzy tell you about me, about your father? And he, the kid goes, well, she said he was a hero of France and went off to fight the hungry ones. And Quinn's like, yeah, that's a bit of a stretch, which I thought was kind of funny. But then he goes, but I did save you from them at the Eiffel Tower. And that's what prompts the response. And I think that whole scene with Quinn, you really get a little look into kind of the fantasy world he's starting to concoct that he's going to have now. Mm-hmm. That, oh yeah, no, you kid, Laurent, you're gonna live here with me, and we're gonna make up for lost time, and I'm gonna take you to ball games and all this stuff, and Isabel's gonna live with us, and it's gonna be great. And of course, the whole time, like you said, Anna is like 10 feet away, and she's just like, what the hell did I do? And it's just not happy about any of this at all. And, the sooner she can get the kid out of there, the sooner she can get Isabel to be a distant memory, the better she's going to be. Right. So that's what's going on in her head. But yeah, I like that little moment with the three of them there, because he has a little moment with Quinn, and then he has a little moment with Anna.
Yeah.
And again, like we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, I thought it was great in that he reads Anna really well, where he's like, you don't want me here. Yeah. And she's, she does her best to kind of, placate him and say, no, I want you to be happy. I want you to be where you're happiest. Right. And she's already decided that wherever that place is, it ain't here.
Yes.
But again, he kind of sees right through her, and he, what does he say? Like, you're a nice person, but you don't want people to know you're a nice person. And she kind of, again, I think is taken aback a little bit that he can read her as easily as he does, but she still is kind of like, no, I just want what's best for you. But again, clearly what's best for him is for him to get the hell out of there as far as she's concerned. So
absolutely.
But yeah,
absolutely.
I love that sequence. I thought that was a really fun sequence.
Yeah. And you can sort of see, I felt in that moment where I was like, he's going to put Laurent in danger, and Anna is going to do something to put herself in danger to try and save Laurent, or, connect him back up with his people, or whatever it may be. And I didn't know what that was yet. Like, I felt like that was going to happen. She just didn't want him to be there. She just didn't want.
It's funny because my gut feeling here is that she's the one that's going to go to Jeanette, and she's going to sell out the kid.
Oh, interesting.
And be like, oh, by the way, I know where the kid is, and I will give him to you because, I hate kids. You know what I mean? I mean, so, because again, we see at the end of the episode, right? Isabel's like, well, I'm going to have to go try and negotiate with Quinn to get Laurent out of the city. And that the only thing that he's going to ask for is, well, clearly you're going to stay here with me, right?
Right.
And that's not going to play for Anna. And so I see at some point in either episode 5 or episode 6, probably episode 5 to set up episode 6, Anna is going to drop dime on Laurent and Isabel and Daryl and just sell them all out, because not that she doesn't like them, not that she doesn't want them to get the way, she just wants them out of her little world because it's not cool.
Yeah, they blew up her world pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's my feeling. I don't think she's going to be like, no, you go with Daryl. I think she's going to be like, no, I'm getting rid of you. I don't care. So
yeah.
And I think we're going to see that. I think eventually, her true colors are going to come out, and she's going to be like, look, you little shit, I don't like you. Get away from me.
Yeah.
So
as emotionally draining as that scene was with Quinn, we must discuss the pig scene.
Oh my goodness. Where we get good nun, bad Daryl.
But here's what's interesting. In this scene, well, first of all, that's probably the most brutal I think I've ever seen Daryl be.
Mm-hmm.
And on purpose. He wasn't trying to get himself out of a situation, because I've seen Daryl, really hurt someone when he's engaged in battle with a person. They are toe to toe, they are face to face, they're hand to hand, right? But this is someone who is tied up. Nothing's going to happen to them. I've never seen him do this, but it had flavors of The Last of Us in that moment, because think of exactly the same moment,
Yeah.
when he was questioning that guy about where did they take her? Where is she? And he killed them anyway.
Yeah. Or the scene when he, in the laundromat, when their car gets, disabled, right? When the tires blow out and he catches that kid and he tells her, look, go in the other room,
Yeah, because I have to do something you shouldn't be watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have Daryl being, because Daryl didn't get brutal right off the bat. Isabel's trying to just ask. It's all in French and everything. And Armand is being quite a shit, because I was like, how does he know about Isabel? Oh, Quinn and his big fat mouth. Yeah. And
you have to think that Quinn, in the years that she's been gone, has badmouthed her for, leaving him by the side of the road. And so, the stories were, she was a thief and, kind of a little whore and, stole everything that wasn't tied down, and just was, painted a really not necessarily untrue, but very unkind picture of her to anyone that would listen, even though, he's like inside, he's like, please come back, but so I think Armand has heard the stories from Quinn enough that when he got to meet Isabel, his first thought was, oh yeah, I know who you are, kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And so everything that's going on in that moment is very verbal at first, and she's sort of running the show, and Daryl doesn't understand French, but he's watching this exchange, and it made me watch their body language. It made me really pay attention to how Isabel was physically reacting to the moment and how Armand was physically reacting in the moment, because that's the only thing that Daryl had to get his cues off of. He knows that Armand was fucking with her, was saying these terrible things about her. I mean, yes, they were true things, but he was dredging up this awful past of hers and yada yada and throwing it in her face the way he was. And it was this sort of mental and emotional power play, and he was winning to a degree in that moment. And I think Daryl was just paying attention because he's observant, and he's paying attention to what was going on there, and knew that this guy had something that was emotionally had a hold on Isabel right then and there, and that he had to intervene with something dramatic. And oh boy, did he. Boy, because it was story time for Daryl. And oh my God, he tells the pig story, which was crazy, but also very it was right along the same lines as what he was doing, all about, the kid who wants to save the pig, so he does it a little at a time, when actually in the long run it was probably more painful for the pig because it bled out, whatever. Meanwhile, Daryl sticks a sharp object into this dude's belly like he is shivving him on the yard at a jail. Because it wasn't just like, I'm gonna stab you, bum, and hit you once. It was bum, 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 bum. Like he was. And he was treating this guy like a stuck pig. So there was so many layers going on in that story, in that scene. It was brutal. And then also, I like how he did exactly the same thing as Joel did in Last of Us. He told Isabel, you might want to step out. And she's like, no, I'll stay. Yeah. And I thought that was very, very telling, because she's a nun and she's a woman of God, but she has a past, and she knew what was going to happen here, and she kind of wanted to see it. There was a part of her that wanted to see it happen.
Or she felt if she stays, it might not be as bad. Like Daryl might not do what he would do if she were to leave. You know what I mean? Like almost like he will kind of pull his punches a little. But yeah, I mean, you could tell that when Armand, he almost spits in her face. Yeah. Right. And then he ultimately just kind of he kind of hawks the loogie and has it all locked and loaded. And, I was expecting him just to spit right in her face. And then he kind of gives her the look, and then he spits off to the side. And I think that doing that told Daryl that, okay, she's not getting anywhere, and he's being very disrespectful to her, whatever he's saying. And so that's when he, he's like, okay, my turn. And you're right. I mean, he shivs that guy 5 times. And that knife or whatever it is that he picks up, it's got to be 6 or 7 inches long. I mean, it was not like a little a pen knife or something.
Yeah, he didn't have a little butter knife with a 3-inch handle or blade or whatever. This was long. He's doing big damage to this guy.
I mean, you're right. And you have to, whether the ends justify the means or the road to hell is paved with good intentions, it worked because that guy sung like a canary once he'd been stabbed 6 times.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? So
pain is a great motivator. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah. And so he did. My moment that I really liked in that was when she was trying to talk to him about, tell me where the kid is, and he's like, why would I do that? And she's like, well, then you can walk out of here with grace and dignity because you can still be kind and merciful. This great speech, and he just turns his back on her, and he's like, it's a shame really, because they told me that it's a real party with old Issa. And she kind of has this look like she kind of like, almost like, oh God, and then he goes on to say, I heard all about you that, basically you can claim to be a nun all you want, but we all know that you're like a thievy little whore or a thieving little slut or something, basically just brings back her flashback life that we saw, and brings it all right up to the front of like, he's like, look, I know exactly who you used to be. And the things you used to do. So don't try and be all pious for me because it don't work, And she points out like he has like a St. Christopher's medal or something around his neck. And so she brings up, you believe in something, you wear that medal. Here's your chance, you can do the right thing here because we're all children of God and all that stuff. And he's just like, yeah, I'm not buying that, kid. I know who you are. And again, I thought when he spit, that was the moment that Daryl is like, okay, we tried the carrot.
Yeah.
And we got
that's
nowhere.
Not gonna work. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I have to tell the story about Jimmy and the pig. Yeah. And what I loved about the story was as he's telling it, you're like, I was like, okay, where's he going with this?
Yeah.
What's the point he's trying to make? And it wasn't about it. Ultimately, it was like you said, it was about Jimmy was told to put the pig down because they were going to eat it, and he didn't want to hurt the pig, so he ended up kind of like stabbing it a bunch of times, and that ultimately was more painful than if he just would have slit its throat or something. And as he's telling that story, he's sticking him repeatedly with that very, very long knife. Yeah. And I think he's just telling him that, like, you know what, dude, you think it hurts now, just wait, because you're not going to die from any of these immediately, but you will die eventually when you bleed out, and it's going to be long and it's going to be very painful.
Yeah.
And so basically saying, if you have anything you want to tell us, now is the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
no, go ahead. Finish.
I was gonna say, and it worked. I was gonna say it worked because he did. He spilled his guts, literally.
Literally.
And I think too, I think Isabel, I think at that point, she at least had made the conclusion or figured out that this guy was from Quinn. Yes. That he was not part of the Guerriere. He wasn't part of Jeanette's group, that he's with Quinn. So she kind of already knew, okay, I know where the kid is.
Yeah.
But they still needed that dude to find a way to get in there.
Exactly. As Daryl was saying too, like, we can't go in the front door. We got to figure out, there's got to be a way to get in the back way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love too that the Daryl sort of like, quote unquote, the moral of the story is, and he says like, no one ever fucked with Jimmy anymore.
No one ever fucked with Jimmy anymore.
And I was like, that's great. And then like after they, get they get the stuff they need out of Armand, and they let it be known that they've got to put together a plan of where to go, what to do. They're sort of they've done their plan, and it's with Falou and these other folks, and they're sort of walking away. Mm-hmm. and Isabel tries to get a little bit closer to Daryl and understand him a little better by asking, she's like, you were Jimmy in that story. And he's like, nah, man, I made that shit up. She literally waves it off. He got shit up on the fly. And you're like, and I don't know if it's true or not. I really don't. Yeah. And I wonder if it is true. He just was like, okay, you hugged me already. I can't get close to any more people anymore. Like, I got to get back to my Carol,
I got my Carol.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't know if he said that out of, don't worry about it, because he's always been very sort of like blow off any of his like emotional angst or pain or PTSD from his childhood. He very much is the like, don't worry about it. That's in the past. Like, he's been that guy. So I don't know if it was out of that or if he really did just make it up. But either way, I loved the reaction. I made that shit up.
Yeah,
he just like flings his hand. Yeah,
just totally deflects any of, there's no emotional significance. I wasn't sharing. I wasn't letting you in, what I mean? It was just sort of like, nope, I just made that shit up to prove accentuate the point that as I was stabbing that dude, that he was in really deep trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So again, like I was saying, when they did put together sort of like a plan for like an assault on, Precinct 13, to sort of get in there. And it was pretty smart. This Armand told them about a literal back door, and he said, it's very dangerous or whatever. We're like, yeah, oui, very dangerous. And so Falou and his guys do a sort of mini assault at the front door, but that's a diversion. They bring all of their firepower to the front, which means Daryl goes in kind of like this, this grate that leads to like the underground, like catacombs area, not the catacombs, but there's some sort of like underground walkway or whatever. And he's able to sort of walk right in, right like behind the bar. So it is a good plan. It worked very, very well for him to be able to enter. They did run into some ghouls while they were in that hallway, and the guy like falls. It looks like he injured his leg a little bit too and needs help, and he's like, come on, man, help me. And he's like, nope. I forget what he said, but it was some sort of really good smart ass.
I love that when he leaves him to get eaten. Yeah, Armand, like you said, like kind of surprises him and like punches him in the face and gets him to drop the leash because he's got him tied up, and he runs ahead of him. And when Daryl catches up to him, I don't know, something's happened to his leg, whether he got bit or he just hurt it. And you can hear that the ghouls are kind of approaching, and he's like, help me, come on. And he's like, it's right up ahead. There's a door right up there. He's like, help me. And he's like, nope. And then he pats him on the shoulder and he goes, bon appetit.
Oh, that's right. I meant to write that down. I forgot, but I was like, and of course he's Daryl, so he doesn't say it with like bon appetit. There's no accent. He's just like, bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Mon frere. Yeah, and so then he leaves, and then I mean literally as soon as Daryl moves down the corridor, like 6 ghouls just descend on that guy, and you get some really good sound design of them just ripping him to shreds.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
And again, I like that sequence. They should be taking that sequence. They should be emailing that every day to the knuckleheads and be like, see, this is what zombies do. And so they
kill
make
people
and they eat them, just to help remind them. But yeah, I did. That was so great when he's just like, bon appetit, and it leaves them, and you're like, it was kind of Shane-esque.
Yes.
With what's his name when he shoots the dude.
Otis, yeah.
With Otis, sort of, you know what? I don't have to run faster than them. I just have to run faster than you.
Yeah,
that
I don't have to be the fastest.
Yeah.
I don't have. I can't be the slowest. Is
right.
The thing.
Right.
Oh yeah, it was good. Yeah,
but,
very good.
That was a very fun one. That almost jumped the ghoul looking under the tin for my favorite moment of the episode, because, and you're right. I was thinking about this after I watched it the second time this afternoon here. I can't remember Daryl being that cold-blooded too many times.
Yeah.
Like if someone's trying to kill him, he has no problem killing you. I mean, he will. You know what I mean? But like, these are kind of moments where the person in question is very defenseless.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of on Daryl.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about it because, you have a better memory of the main show than I do with some of the earlier seasons. And I couldn't remember a moment where Daryl would knowingly leave someone to get eaten that way. I don't remember that happening. Do you? I mean,
I don't. To get eaten, I don't know. I mean, he has been involved in a couple of torture scenes where they needed to get information. I mean, there was in season 2 there was that kid that they tortured and then ended up,
Is that the one where they're taking care of all the old people?
No. That was in season 1. Season 2 was when they were at the bar that was not far from Herschel's place, and these dudes just showed up, and he was like, that. They kept asking, like, where's your group? And he's like, we don't have a group. It's just a bunch of guys. We don't know what we're doing. And da-da-da.
Right,
and they're like, you're lying. And, and so he was involved a little bit in that, I believe. But I can't remember if that was during the time when he also was having that hallucination thing where he went when he was sort of lost in the woods. But anyway, so there was that. Then when he was with Leah towards the end there, he was sort of forced by Pope to do that torture of that one dude that he had to do it or else he'd be dead himself. But I can't really remember a time where there was like an intentional zombie. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure there's like one, like maybe one or two, and it was like, pushing somebody towards a zombie because it saved Carol or it saved the kids or something. Yeah. I can't think of a specific instance. But yeah, the torture thing with Leah and Pope, that definitely happened not too long ago on the show for sure. There was that. And I'd say that, that was just circumstantial. I can't think of scenes where he was brutal for almost no reason with this guy.
Right.
He needed information, but he's never been that brutal just for like getting information. He went from like 0 to 60 in a second. Yeah.
That's what I said. It both instances where I definitely got a sense of, I'm not sure that that's something Daryl would go to right away. And again, I get it. 6 episodes, you got to tell your story. I understand. We're moving things along, and so Daryl doesn't quite have as much time to develop a good amount of hatred for that guy to where killing him makes sense. And so he's just going to do it. But it did seem to me to be a little bit, I'm like, and again, I loved it. I thought it was great. And, again, karmically speaking, that guy had it coming, right? But it just did seem a little bit un-Daryl there. And I know we've been picking up on a lot of moments in this show where Daryl's a little un-Daryl. So I guess the show is just being what the show is at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of him going from 0 to 60, we also had the conversation about stuff moving quick because we've only got 6 episodes. Yeah. So we don't really have time for him to have, in the main series, he would have tortured this guy all day and then finally gave up and was like, okay, fine. You're not going to go. I'm going to stab you in the stomach. What I mean?
Exactly.
Like, only because I'm forced to, So yeah, I can't really remember any particular instance, but like I said, it could just be like a sort of compressed for time. Like we're going to make him seem very brutal. And he's kind of desperate too. I mean, at least in these other instances, he was close to like a home base. He's like the literal fish out of water. Like he has no comfort here, no safety blanket of any kind, because he's so far from home. I mean, that can change a person's behavior too. So he gets a grain of salt. He gets a little bit of rope there to sort of.
You're right. You're right.
Just a little bit though. I want to make sure it's still. I mean, it's still Daryl fighting for the greater good is still very Daryl. Whether or not he would practically disembowel a man just to get information. It's a little on the edge, but I mean. I'll accept it. We'll accept that answer for this.
Judges will accept the answer.
Judges will accept it for the ruling on the field. So they do have this little assault. You and I both made note of it, before they sort of broke apart to go and do this assault, Falou has a moment. He speaks in French to his people, but he makes sure to let everybody know we go in as one, we come out as one. And I love his energy. I've mentioned it before. And I just think he's fantastic. Part of them sort of breaking apart to do this assault was Falou and his people go to the front door, right? Daryl goes in the back door with the dude. This is all to just get Laurent and get him out of there. And then Sylvie and Isabel head down to the river. There's going to be a guy there with a boat that they're supposed to meet. And that's the boat that's going to help get Laurent out of the city. They've arranged something. So there's this really great little short kind of quiet scene that Isabel and Sylvie have as they're walking to the boat that I thought was really, really cute, where she asks, could you, she saw like some energy between Isabel and Daryl and was asking, have you ever had thoughts of a man after becoming a nun or whatever? And she was like, no. And she explains, and she's like, oh, because it seemed, between you and, Mr. Daryl. And she's like, oh, no, not at all.
That was just concern is what she said.
Right. And then, of course, Isabel turns it around and she asks Sylvie, well, obviously there's something there with you and Emile.
Oh, I think she watched her kiss him. So it was pretty obvious that something was going on.
I think they did that a little privately because she tells her about the kiss. And she's like, but anyway, I just thought like them sort of sharing, and Sylvie was almost sad that she didn't have feelings for Daryl, or that her feelings that she was showing were concern and not romantic feelings.
Yeah.
She felt kind of sad. And Isabel was basically like, listen, I lived plenty of life before I became a nun. So she's basically like, I have loved and I've had plenty of romance before. So it is okay to not have romance from here on out because I've experienced plenty of it, and she just basically is like, and you're young and you get a chance to do this, if you would like, then go for it. She pretty much gives her blessing. And Sylvie even says that she thinks that she wants to stay in Paris because she's, obviously she does have feelings for Emile, but also she likes the home base that's there. She likes Falou's group. She likes the cause that they're working toward. She feels like very much like a part of a group, which makes sense because weren't all of the nuns killed other than Isabel and Sylvie? Yeah. So there's really nothing to go back to, which isn't discussed, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. So, yeah.
I mean, what's going to happen to the nuns in the original plan was really never discussed. It was, exactly. We got to get the kid to Paris, and then there was never and then we will go back XYZ, to where, that was just sort of, they hadn't really. I'm sure they were thinking we'll never even get to Paris, so what's the point of planning beyond that,
Right.
But I agree that, she sees this community as this is a place that she could belong. And I'm not going to lie, the cute boy is a huge part of that. There's no doubt, but I think it was what was great was she tells Izzy about the kiss, and she's like, I'm really kind of confused, because I'm a nun and I'm not supposed to have these feelings, but I'm having these feelings, and Izzy is great because she's like, first kisses usually are, she brings that up. It's very confusing. You're right. First kisses are, and then you're right. She it's almost like the girl is asking Izzy for like permission.
Yes.
So like, this is okay, right? That I'm, thinking about this boy in ways that I shouldn't be thinking about this boy, and that's when Izzy kind of tells her, I thought it was great. I almost wrote this one down too, where she, like you said, she goes, look, I did a lot of living before in the before time, and you've never had a chance to live a normal life. And basically it was her telling her, you're fine, and in terms of the whole nun and the God thing, this is part of the plan. This is what God intended for you to do, that yes, you are not doing anything you should feel, like you're betraying anything or going back on anything or whatever. This is going to be your life. And so I agree. It was a neat little scene. It was quiet. It was sort of like a little bit for us to kind of catch our breath before the next action sequence that kicks off. And it worked. I thought it was really nice.
Yeah. So the action it was a cute little scene. Action sequence is as the assault is happening at the front. Daryl enters in the rear. He slowly sort of makes his way up to and finds Laurent. They are about to leave. And he's like, oh, well, there's Anna with a gun pointed at us.
Right.
And it's a tense moment where I think Daryl is he's feeling out the idea that he doesn't think that Anna has it in her to shoot either of them. He has it on his face. He doesn't feel that. And, Laurent is sort of surprised because I think he felt like Anna was someone who he could trust, I guess, at least a little bit. So I think the gun itself surprised him, but then after a moment, she just says, go, just go.
Just leave. Yeah.
Just leave.
Get this kid out of here.
And Daryl hesitates for a second. And I think Laurent does too. And they're like, she's just like, you have to go, like, get out of here.
And she puts the gun, she's pointing the gun at him for a minute, and then she kind of lowers it. So she's just like, just go, you know? Yeah. And we should point out that in the one of the scenes with Quinn and her, before that, he gives her the gun and basically assigns her the job of, your job is to protect the kid.
Yeah. At all costs, yeah.
And so we got to see how this is going to play out, because in terms of like doing her job, she sucks at it, okay?
Yeah, she failed.
Yeah, big time, epic fail. And but again, like we pointed out, this woman cannot wait to get this kid out of that bar.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And again, she is so threatened by these people showing up and taking Quinn away from her, that she is literally willing to do anything to get them out. And so when Daryl shows up and, you can hear the explosions of the Molotov cocktails and the hand grenades at the front door down the way, you know what I mean? So clearly something's going on. She's like, you know what? Just go. Go.
Yeah.
Leave. I don't care. I just go. I don't want to know what you're doing. I don't want to know where you're going. Just go. And yeah, you're right. Daryl kind of looks at her and kind of sizes her up and goes, yeah, she's not going to do anything.
Yeah. And we can go. Yeah.
Yeah. And so while they're doing that, Quinn goes to the front entrance. And by this point, Fallow and his people have all retreated. They kind of, fired all their bullets and threw all their Molotov cocktails. And I think the good-looking boy was wounded, right? Didn't he get shot in the leg or something?
Yeah, but it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah, it's not mortal, but he is wounded. So they collect him and they retreat. And then Quinn shows up and he's, his guys are there, and some of his guys got zapped, so they did some damage. And he's like, where are they? And they're like, oh, they left. And then he's immediately like, it's a fork and diversion, and immediately knows, oh, crap. And so he goes racing back to where Laurent is. And this sets up, possibly the greatest non-elevator shaft fight sequence in the entire history of The Walking Dead, as far as I'm concerned. So.
But it was still raised, though, which I thought was interesting.
It
Not
was.
an elevator, but they were high up. It was like this sort of catwalk area that leads from, the rooms where Laurent was being held to the stairs that go downstairs. And they just have an epic sort of...
it's a dukeroo. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it was a good fight. It was really good fight. He got some good shots in on Daryl. So it was a very well matched fight. So
well, and you know what I thought was really interesting about it is Daryl gets the upper hand, and he ends up and he like grabs Quinn by like the back of his neck, and he rams his head into like the metal railing, and that kind of knocks him out. And so Quinn is on the floor, the metal floor of this walkway, and Daryl pulls out his trench knife and is gonna slit his throat.
He is, yeah.
And I mean, he is on top of him, and he's got the knife right up there. And just before he does it, he looks up, and there's Laurent eyeballing him.
Yeah.
Wide-eyed balls of like, holy crap. And you know, Daryl, again, this I thought was very on Daryl in that he went, oh, wait, this is that kid's father.
Yeah.
And I can't kill him. You know,
not in front of him.
not in front of him, no. And I think he almost kind of, you kind of maybe had this, I kind of read into it, this idea of Daryl has this moment of, you know, is this guy really a bad guy, or is he doing what he's doing right now because this is his son that he literally just found out he got like 10 minutes ago?
Yeah.
You know, and so not necessarily excusing his behavior, but maybe at least understanding and going, you know what, I'm not going to kill you.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't. And so, again, it helps because now the character's still around for the next 2 episodes, which is great. Yeah. But I did think it was an interesting little moment because he was fully ready to slit that dude's throat.
Oh, without question.
And then went, oh, wait.
Yes. Small child watching, this is his dad. But dad. He does give him a nice good whack at the end and knocks him out. A good whack to the face.
And then at the end, when we see when Izzy shows up at the end, and I love the makeup they do for Quinn, because he's just got bruises on his jaw and on his temple. I mean, it's like, yeah, that dude looks like he was just in a drag down, throwback fight. I mean, it was
for sure.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah. So speaking of Izzy going back to be able to see Quinn after this fight, we get the scene where Daryl shows up with Laurent. Everything seems well and good. They're going to board this boat, but they, I think it's Falou has the, someone has the intel that they're going to close all of the borders. And
like,
you'd be
all the ways out of the city are now being guarded by the Guerriere type thing.
Yeah, so they're going to have a difficult time leaving the city because everything's guarded, etc. And they're like, they're trying to figure out, do we go? Do we not go? And in that moment, Isabel's like, you go. Quinn has, he has some kind of power here, and he can make sure that those roads open. I can make it happen, basically, is what she's saying. She's going to go back there and she's going to get Quinn to have some of the soldiers pulled back from some of the borders of the town so that they can slip through. And she recognizes that this might be it. She may be going to Quinn and they may never see her again. Yeah. Not that she may die, but she's not going to be able to get away again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She was able to get away from him once, and it's not clear that she would be able to do that again.
No, yeah. She I think she pretty much knows what she's going to have to negotiate.
Yeah.
For Quinn, I part of me feels this is very misguided because this is his son we're talking about, and I just have a real hard time believing that dude's going to be like, no, you're right, my son should totally leave, and I should never see him again. Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think that part of it I hated, and I hate when characters do that in these shows where they're like, no, I'm going to go try and talk sense to them, because it's like, you're not in a sensible situation at all.
Yeah.
And you're much stronger if you stay with the group and you guys work together than you go off by yourself. But anyway, that's what she does. But she's going into it with the idea, I'm guessing, of I'm going to offer myself in exchange for the kid.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
Daryl's kind of like, all right, thanks for coming. And,
Yeah,
you know,
he protests a little bit at first because I think he knows after that scene with Armand, before the pig scene,
mm-hmm.
I think he has an idea of what she's going back to, and he knows it's not good, but he also, after, you know, trying a little bit, he realizes that he attracts headstrong women in his life, so he knows he's not going to be able to talk her out of it.
I'm not going to win this fight. Yeah.
He's been down this road before with others, so he might as well just.
The last girl I tried to do this with ended up joining a group of crazy people who wore masks that hunted me down, and I had to kill her. So yeah.
And she set up this crazy thing that was going to send like 500 like flaming arrows at my head. So
with firecrackers on them.
Right. So I'm not good at judging women, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna let you do.
That's right.
What you want to do, Isabel.
Isabel, you do you. I'm going to get on the boat. Yeah.
So he makes that choice.
Yes.
So, you know, we get like you said, Isabel makes it back to the club. We get a quick moment there where you see his, you know, his after. This is what his face looks like after getting the shit beat out of him.
Mm-hmm.
But we have also, you know, Daryl and Laurent on this boat sort of heading down the river, and turns out it's the Seine because they're right next to the Eiffel Tower.
Oh yeah.
And they head down to the end, you know, just a bit beyond the Eiffel Tower, and there's this really great moment. You know, they're looking at, you know, this bridge that they go underneath and all of the like architecture stuff. It's just all very beautiful, and they're having a moment here where they can sort of catch their breath and enjoy what they're looking at, kind of. And they're looking around and looking at this, that, and the other. And then as they're sort of come to a point in the river, there's a statue there, and it is a small Statue of Liberty statue. And I just thought that was a very interesting image for them to use to, I mean, it puts them in exactly the right place. If you Google it all, that is there at like sort of the mouth of the river, right by where the Eiffel Tower is. It's literally right behind. You can Google the little Statue of Liberty and it'll show the Eiffel Tower behind it, you know? So it's good because it grounds it in reality. It puts this place where they are in an actual place. And it's interesting because there's a lot going on there. There's, you know, that statue was a gift from America to France. And so there's, you know, it shows like friendship between America and France, which is, you know, happening, you know, literally right now as well, you know, this friendship that they have. But it's this connection to America for him. And it's sort of a homesickness thing too. Like he just wants to get back to where he was. And, you know, here he is in Paris. And then what do we see? This so very American symbol right there as he's like moving on here. So I just thought it was a really interesting image to use. I see you included it as well. What were your thoughts on it?
It's pretty much very similar to along the lines of what you were saying. You know, that it's a way to remind Daryl and us, the audience, of despite everything that's going on in the city and all the fighting and you know who's going to have the boy and all this stuff, there's a bigger final goal for Daryl. And you know, it just kind of reminds all of us, including him, that you know what, you're this is not your home. This is not where you're going to put down roots and you're going to stay. You want to get back across the pond to Crazy Carol and her cookies and you know, Judith and everybody else that you left behind. That's your goal. And
Right.
this is just sort of the means to get there. You know, you have to kind of get through this combat, this, you know, trial, whatever you want to call it, to ultimately get you to, you know, the coast where you're going to find a ship, supposedly, that's going to be able to get you across the Atlantic. So I was a nice little callback to Daryl to just kind of remind him and by extension, us, the audience, of, oh, yeah, there's a lot more going on for Daryl. This is not his end game. He has other things to do. And so, but you're right. I love the imagery. I love when they go under the one bridge and you see like the two water nymphs or mermaids or whatever they are, the statue, you know, the artwork, and then you do see the Eiffel Tower, and then it closes on the you know, the quarter size, you know, Statue of Liberty that the Americans sent back to France. You know, like it is a symbol of their friendship and all that stuff. So very interesting way to end the episode. Like I said, overall, I thought this episode was a lot of fun. There's a lot of head scratching moments where we kind of made you think of, like, what are we watching? What are they telling us?
Right.
But it moved very well, and it was very quick, and there were just a couple of nits in there that I kind of went, I don't know. Right. But overall, it didn't deter my enjoyment. I like I said, this is close to being my favorite episode of the show so far.
Ooh, look at that. So. I was also good, and I agree too. A very good episode, a good sort of imagery to sort of end the episode on. I thought it also helped tie the title together too. Because the title of the episode, the La Dame de Fer, is the Lady of Iron. Mm-hmm. And you could easily say that that's representative of Janae, who rules with sort of an iron fist. Mm-hmm. And also Isabel in that moment where she is so strong to go back to Quinn to sort of help pave the way for Laurent being able to get where he needs to go. And that's where I thought they were going with it. And then here's this image at the very end of the episode. And the Statue of Liberty is at times referred to as the Iron Lady. So here's this, you know, these different moments with women throughout the episode. And the title is the Lady of Iron. And it finishes with a literal, you know, Lady of Iron sitting there, right in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. So it's just, I thought that was a very cool sort of tied all of that imagery and the title of the episode together. Yeah. And like you said, it moved quickly. It was a really good episode. I don't know yet if it was one of my favorites, but I really did like it a lot out of the ones we've seen so far, for sure. Very good.
Cool.
All right. I think we actually were very good and covered all of our points. We never do that. We did a good job of sort of hitting everything. Is there anything that I'm missing that we didn't and we want to go back and cover?
The only thing I wanted to mention is I wanted to talk just real quick about Quinn. Mm-hmm. The actor who plays Quinn is this guy named Adam Negatis. British guy, you know. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh, I've seen that guy. And I was really, I decided from right after episode 1, I'm like, I'm not going to look him up on IMDb. I'm going to remember, because I should be able to remember where I've seen this guy from, you know, one of those things, very stubborn. And so I kept racking my brain. And finally, I realized he is in season 1 of The Terror. Which is the ships in the Arctic or in the North Pole. He's like the guy in charge of all the crazy people.
Yes.
Kind of the con man and so on. But then I had another realization where I really recognized him, and that is he was Vasily the fireman in Chernobyl.
Shut up. He was not.
Yeah, he was.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
So, I know. And then as soon as I thought, I'm like, that can't be right. And then I looked it up. I'm like, holy shit, it was that guy. So yeah.
Oh my
God. You know, if you're listening and, you know, and you're looking at that guy like I was, and you're like, I know I've seen that guy before. And he's done other things too. I mean, he's been an actor for like at least the last, 10, 15 years. So he's worked quite a bit in British television and other projects and things. So it's not like those are the only things he's done. But he was in season 1 of The Terror, and then I think immediately after that he got Chernobyl and was Vasily. So yeah. But that's the connection. So if it was driving you nuts as well as to where you've seen that guy before, that would be 2 likely suspects. So I just wanted to bring that up. So
the Chernobyl connection is just great. That's awesome, considering we literally just covered it.
Exactly.
So exciting. Oh, I love it. Well, that's such a great spot to sort of take our little break there. So that's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss our little bits of listener feedback we got, what's coming up on the podcast.
So please stick around, because we will be right back.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally gonna get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a weekly podcast covering the hit AMC programs The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the latest episodes. Aim for the Head, available on iTunes. You can also follow them on Facebook.
Hey there, this is Greg Nicotero, and you're listening to Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots, they really just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. We're going to jump right into our listener feedback that we received. And I'm going to get us going. So first off, we have a late entry from our international desk. It's an email from Andy, folks, who we haven't heard from in quite a bit. So hey, Andy, thanks so much for writing in. We're so excited to hear from you. And he sent in some feedback about the first 3 episodes. He was a little behind, and he binged the first 3. So that's what's in his email here. So he says,
Bonjour, Andy.
He says, Salute, Diana. Salute, Steve. And says, oh la la. I hope you guys got no French listeners. Diana has to work on her French pronunciation, and that comes from a German. Andy.
Oh, Andy.
Just for that, I'm going to read the whole thing with a terrible French accent. Sorry for the delay in writing my feedback. I'm sorry. No, I won't do that because it actually hurts my throat to do that. So Andy says, sorry for the delay in writing my feedback. It was difficult for me to motivate myself to watch The Walking Dead again. I totally understand. But I finally binged through the 3 episodes. I don't think it was a good idea to let Daryl do the series alone. Ooh, shots fired. He is too introverted and needs a partner. They should have chosen another one after Carol passed on it. Connie would have been cool. And he goes on to say, a few thoughts about some stuff you said on your podcast. So Andy caught up on the show, and he also caught up on the podcast. So thanks for doing that, Andy. That's cool. That's pretty awesome. Thank you. That's quite a time commitment there, because I know we are, as the Americans say, chatty. Chatties, yes. So he says, the birth of Laurent is not beyond the realm of possibility. In fact, the blood of the mother has no contact with the baby. It's the point of the placenta to avoid this. It only passes substances through that the baby needs, but works as a shield against microbes. Therefore, it seems possible that the mother dies from an infection, which the baby doesn't get, which is actually, I didn't know that and I looked into it, and Andy is 100% right.
See, now I disagree because the stork brings the baby. So, clearly the mother is not really involved at all.
I might have a book that you might need to read, Steve. It'll have pictures that will horrify you, but you may need to read it.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, it's very interesting. They actually, there's a lot that's not known about the placenta, which is very interesting. It's not a very studied organ, and it is technically it's an organ created during the development of the embryo. And it is exactly that. It sort of takes in from the mother what the baby will need, and it sort of filters it. If you think of it as like this big, large filter sack, as it were, and then everything passes through that filter, and then it gets transferred to the baby. So I think what we're saying is that in order to keep yourself from getting the zombie virus, we need to have people start to eat placenta. Is really that. Okay, it feels like that's the only way. Let's be honest.
You're saying that. I still am sticking to my stork story and not going there. Okay.
So placenta is involved in some way. I don't know how, but we're gonna have to figure that out.
Stop saying placenta.
Anyway, moving on. He says, when I saw those guns they use in France, I was wondering if they plundered a museum. I had the same thought. I don't think this is plausible. Making a gun is not trivial. You have to drill a hole in a metal rod with high precision and then add the spiral on the inside that gives the bullets the spin. It would be much easier to use the guns they have and make new ammunition for them. So I can see that. And then, this is interesting. I have a bad French accent, but you don't know how to type out French words. He says, I think you made a typo, Steve, in translating the first episode title. The Lost Blade is La Lame Perdue. So L-A space L-A-M-E Perdue in French, while the title was La Ame Perdue, which is all one word, L apostrophe A-M-E Perdue. So, and what was that? The Lost Child, or I can't remember what the first episode.
The Lost Chicken Maker. I don't know. All I can tell you, Andy, is I typed in LAMEPERDUE because my phone does not allow me to put the accent like the word actually has, and that's how it translated it. So I don't know how to tell you.
It's just an apostrophe.
Yeah, sure. That's what they want you to think.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's interesting. Thank you for that follow-up there, Andy, because it was interesting in that first episode. More like, why did it tell you this?
Yeah.
But now I know how to say the Lost Blade in French. It's La Lame Perdue.
La Lame Perdue.
Or La Lame Perdue. All I know is that we're talking about those Purdue guys, and it's all about their chicken.
There it is. That's all it is.
And he finishes off by saying, Au revoir de Germanie, André.
André.
I don't know. That's how you say it in French, I guess. I don't know. Thanks for writing in, Andy. As always, we love to hear from you. Great perspective. And yes, knowing about the placenta, because I'm going to say that word 10 more times.
Yes, stop.
Is very helpful and may help explain the quote-unquote miracle of Laurent. So thanks so much, Andy, for writing in. We hope we keep hearing from you about Daryl Dixon.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, just think, man, we've only got a couple weeks until we get back to Fear.
Huh? And we know you're going to be really excited to talk about that. Let's be honest.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Andy. All right, moving along now. This is feedback for our episode 3, which was actually last week's episode. And this comes from our pal, Teresa Harper, via the Facebook. Hello, Teresa.
Hey, Teresa.
And she goes, once again, this episode did not disappoint. I loved it. Side note about my ghost emoji after my last comment. And again, last week she left feedback, and I think she had 3 ghost emojis, if I remember correctly.
This time it's just 2.
It's just 2, but she was referencing those, and she goes, I am a paranormal investigator, and I love the ghost emoji, LOL. And I hope that's true, because that would be really awesome. But if you're just making it funny, I appreciate that as well. She goes on to say, love listening to you both. Thanks for covering and doing such an amazing job. And then she finishes with 2 ghost emojis. So
I just want to state for the record that just finding out now that you are a paranormal investigator is pretty amazing. And I don't know about you, Steve, but I'm going to need some more information on that.
I think so. I mean, there's a whole podcast right there.
Right. Like, have you appeared on someone's podcast? Have you appeared on a TV show? Have you?
That's right.
I have so many questions.
I do too.
Yeah. Amazing.
Absolutely.
Tell us, Teresa. We want to know.
We want to know more. Yes, we do. We need to get to the bottom of this. I want to know, are ghosts more Casper-y, or are they more like Scooby-Doo? I mean, that's what I need to know.
Yeah. This is important to know. Those are the details we need.
Exactly.
Thanks for writing in, Teresa. Sorry I missed your feedback last week, but that's just meant that we were supposed to highlight it more deeply this week.
Exactly.
That's for sure. All right. So next up, we got an email, another one from our international desk, from our pal Bev in sunny old England.
Hello, Bev.
Bev wrote us in via the email and says, "Hi, guys. I hope you've had a good week. Daryl's trail of destruction blazed its way through Paris, starting where the last episode left off with him falling through the roof. I sure as hell didn't fall for the fake-out scene with the walkers ignoring a praying Laurent. Did anyone? No.
No. Sure. Okay. Whatever, placenta girl.
Yeah, shut up. Whatever, stork boy. She continues and says, it did lead to a nice underwater fight with walkers/swimmers for Daryl. I was a bit surprised that all the bad guys were gone when he got out, a bit convenient. Interesting, I didn't even really notice that until she pointed it out, but that is totally freaking true.
Yeah. Codron was right on his tail, and then they were all gone. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
They were like, oh, he fell through a roof. Oh, well, we
that's...
can't get him. We can't get him now. He must be done for.
Yeah, they're just like, that's the end of that chapter.
That's that.
Yeah.
Now we know how they got away in the first place. Hello. So she continues to say, I think this episode lacked a little of the character depth that the previous ones had done so well. There seemed to be a lot of cliches as well, especially with the pigeon guy. My husband said they might as well have dressed him up in a striped top, stuck a beret on his head, and had him shouting, onions, onions, does anyone want my onions? Then there were the random people in apartments, sitting in their windows, making art for passerbys to see, which seemed weird in an apocalypse. I can see how that could be. She continues and says, the whole episode felt to me like this was a very much a bridge to get us to the more important plot threads up the road, one of which I predict will involve Daryl not getting on the boat at the end of the season in favor of going back to save Isabel. Interesting. She says, well, that's all my thoughts this week. Looking forward to hearing yours. Bev from slightly less stormy Devon, which is good to hear. We don't like when it's stormy in Devon for you.
We do not.
Nobody likes bad weather. She also included a little PS, which I'm going to share in the podcast feed. I'll just push it out to all of our social media, really. But Bev wanted to let us know that she made her podcast debut last week. Good for you, Bev.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club. And she sent us a link and said if we wanted to listen, she understand if we weren't interested. Why wouldn't we be interested? It's a horror movie podcast that she was on, and they talk about the movie Poltergeist. I'm in.
Creepy clowns.
I know. Oh, God, clowns. Terrible. So I am going to let people see that link. I'll go ahead and push it out there for people, and we'll get to listen to Bev and listen to a different podcast. I love getting turned on to a new podcast. It's called...
You know, Bev, you moved it. You only moved the headstones, didn't you? You only moved the headstones.
You never move the bodies. You only move the headstones. So the group that did the podcast, the horror movie podcast, is called Creative Psychopaths. So you can either look that up on your own. I'll also include the link out through our social media in a bit. So
we could put a voice to Bev. Wouldn't that be cool?
I know. It's always weird because she's not going to sound at all the way she sounds in my head.
I know.
I know.
That is a given. That's
right.
always the way it works.
Yeah. And there's no explanation. It's just such a preconceived, like I have a voice in my head. I couldn't possibly recreate it for you right now. But whatever she sounds like on the podcast, it will not sound like it does in my head.
All right.
That's just the way it works.
I'm super excited to check out that podcast and cram yet another podcast into my podcast cabinet, which is already overflowing.
Same, but I will always make room to talk about Poltergeist. That is a classic movie.
That's right.
Love that
Absolutely.
movie. Ugh, clowns. Awful. And all right, so thanks for writing in, Bev. We appreciate it, and we can't wait to listen to you on a podcast. That's going to be great.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Bev. Really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving along. Our last piece of feedback came from our pal, Alma Contreras.
Hey, Alma.
Hello, Alma. What's going on? And she sent this via the Face Space. And she says, this episode was pretty good. I was so scared for that crying baby in the beginning, especially once the boss lady went to hold it, and she has the emoji of like, oh no.
Yeah, like covering your eyes.
Ooh. And again, I think we're all right there with you. Both of us are like, we were like very worried.
Yeah, very, very.
And then she goes on to say, R.I.P. Pigeon Man. This whole scene seems so unnecessarily cruel. Did they really have to kill this poor old man? At least my boy Daryl got all those fools, LOL. And yeah, I think that was kind of the point, was to show that these guys are very callous and, you know, they're the bad guys, you know.
Yeah,
and you're right. Why would they shoot that guy, waste the bullet for, you know, clearly not a threat? Because they're the bad guys, you know.
Yeah, the bad guys.
But you're right. Daryl did take both of them out and then, you know, left their car, like we said. So, but I'm totally right there with you. She goes on to say, I was left really confused at the end as to why Isabel stayed and sent off Laurent with Daryl. Me too.
Yes.
Not sure if I missed something, but it seemed really stupid for her to go back to Quinn. I agree. Anywho, I'll tune in to see what y'all thought. And I you know what, I'm right there with you. I thought I hate that decision when it happens, when people are like, no, I'm gonna go talk to them because I can talk sense to them. When you're like, no, there's no sense for these people. You know, they're coming from a totally emotional point, and common sense and logic are not gonna work. Yeah. And so again, like one of our, I think like Bev just said in her feedback, you know, the whole point here is that Isabel is much like Negan is stuck at the end of the Negan show. Isabel's going to be stuck at the end of this season, and that's going to be the catalyst for Daryl to stay.
Yes, absolutely.
But you're right. It doesn't make much sense. So I'm right there with you on all your feedback in that I think I pretty much, I felt the exact same things you were feeling. So thank you so much for writing in.
Yeah, thanks so much for writing in. We always love hearing from you, Alma. She's usually like the first. Like I put the post out. What did you guys think? And she's like, oh my God, I have to tell you right now. So awesome. Thanks so much. I always look forward to hearing from you, Alma. Thank you. So coming up next on the podcast next week is going to be episode 5 of Daryl Dixon. We are almost through. It's crazy. Feels like it just started. And the title of that episode is Deux Amours, which translates to Two Loves. Mm-hmm. And I'd write out an episode description, but there isn't one yet. So they are keeping this one tightly lipped. The only thing they didn't keep tightly lipped, which you sort of figured out when you were looking something up, and I got the deets, next week's episode is directed by Greg Nicotero.
Ooh, yeah. Okay,
I
cool.
know.
Yeah.
And also leading to this sort of like secrets mode, when I was looking, they only have like 4 actors and characters listed for the next 2 episodes. They haven't said anything about any of the other actors in the episode. They've got it locked down tight. There have been rumors that folks from the main series may show up either in, I mean, how would they show up in France? I don't know, but maybe a flashback scene sequence. Shows him or I think a flashback that shows how he got on that ship to begin with and made it across the, you know what I mean, like what was that sort of catalyst. So
and they did back after episode 1, they kind of gave you a bunch of scenes for the whole series, if you remember. And there was a lot of stuff that looked like Daryl on the ship
Right.
blowing
So
stuff up and so on. So yeah, maybe we
Yeah.
will get some of him like leaving the Commonwealth and so on. So maybe I think that's very possible. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. But they've got so be careful for spoilers, everybody. I know that they aren't releasing it on the app until the day of, but beware in your feeds, because someone's going to get an advance copy, someone's going to spill the beans. So try and watch the episode as soon as you can. It seems like they're going to have some big things happening in the next 2 episodes. They've got Greg Nicotero directing. They've got the cast list locked down. So it's obviously they're trying to keep some secrets there. So yeah. So tread lightly on the internets in the following week, as it were. So once we're finished with this completely entertaining series, we'll move on to one that nobody cares about. So I don't know if I mentioned that, but Fear's coming back and who cares? But
10/22.
10/22.
Find something else to do that day.
Yeah, mark that date on your calendar and go on a vacation is really what I'm trying to say. I do want to say, like, on the sort of Coleman Domingo sort of discussion that I had in my DVR, since June, for crying out loud, there was this, if people remember, there was this really small series that they did with Coleman back in June, and it was this 4-episode arc of this show called You Are Here. And it sort of charted and followed Coleman while he was in these like 4 major cities. And it showed him sort of seeing people he knew from his past and talking about stuff for the future, etc. And they're quick. They are half-an-hour episodes, so half an hour plus the forwarding through the commercials. These are like really, really quick episodes. I haven't looked. I don't know if they're on AMC Plus, but if you have some ability through a streaming service or through an on-demand thing or whatever, if you're able to watch them, I gotta say, they're quick, they're simple. I really, really enjoyed them. And it reminded me, too, going into Fear the Walking Dead, how much I really just love Coleman Domingo as a person. I think he's a wonderful guy. He's a great actor. The first episode, actually, too, is in Savannah. And he reveals that that's where a lot of the final filming for Fear the Walking Dead was. And he has a little sit down and has a little drinky drink with Kim Dickens.
Oh,
and
nice.
So they talk for a few minutes. It's nothing extensive by any means, but it was, it's a couple of minutes. You get to see them together. They had such great energy together. And it's nice that they will be able to sort of close out the series together in a way. So that was really cool. They do that. They cover Philly, which is where he's from. They cover New York because he has an extensive theater background, and there's lots of really great tidbits, where he meets up with actors he's worked with before and stuff. Really, really great. And the last episode is him in Chicago, which I thought was really great. So clearly there's a little bit of personal stuff there. It was lovely. He literally sits down and has lunch with Mary Zimmerman. And I'm like, oh my God, that's great. And they went to like Pequod's and had pizza. So it's really, really great. It's just and like I said, they're really quick episodes. And it was great because I was like, you know what? This show was terrible. Coleman is a great person and he's a great actor. Stuck on a show that's kind of crappy, but I hope the best for him. When he was talking about Savannah as well, he also revealed, I totally forgot, they are doing a movie version of the musical, The Color Purple, not the movie with but this will have music and everything. So it's a filmed version of the musical. And he has a very large role in that. And there's lots of Oscar buzz for it already. So keep your eye on that. That's coming out around Christmas time. Because they said they filmed in Savannah, some of it. So he was talking about being there for Fear and also for Color Purple. So I was like, Color Purple? What? And looked it all up. So You Are Here, Coleman Domingo. Watch that series. There's lots of stuff on Netflix That's coming up soon, but Fall of the House of Usher is the next Mike Flanagan series. And that's coming out soon, so keep your eye on Netflix. That looks really, really interesting. And I was curious. I wanted to sort of throw it out there to people, and I want you to think about it and not give an answer now, but think about it. Wondering what people would think about at least a mini version of a Walking Dead rewatch when we're, at that point where we're looking for things to sort of talk about and cover. And we never on this podcast covered it, even season 1. So just curious what people would think about that as a possibility for something for us to cover in the future. It doesn't have to be anytime soon or anything like that. We could get some distance from the main show and save it for sometime next year. But just curious if people would ever be interested in that. So, yeah.
All right. I am too.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for us this week, guys. A little bit of a longer episode, but man, did we have some great discussion talking about some of these, some of this imagery and things they talked about and covered in this Daryl Dixon episode. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it. And that's going to do it for us from here. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Bonjour. Don't forget to bonjour, always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they do not work.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTHpodcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
I'm allowed to have an off year with fantasy. It's fine. It's fine.
It's actually kind of just karmically, speaking, it's totally cool because you do like the Patriots. So, you're due to have some shit happen to you. So.